What elite-level skill do you have that makes people uncomfortable? Remembering things about people. I have lied about not knowing things to not seem too much like a creep. Remembering somebody else's schedule. Walking with minimal sound. I creep up on people all the time. I don't mean to, but I make almost no sound when I walk. I'm the same way. I make my wife scream all the time by walking into a room without her noticing. It happens so often that when our son was somewhere between 1 or 2, he also started screaming whenever I walked into a room. He just thought that was a thing we did in our family. It happens to other people outside of home too. I start talking to people and they jump out of their skin. There was a restaurant in a Hyatt hotel that had a casino. The waiter from that restaurant remembered our preference when we showed up with a friend 6 months later. You guys were either amazingly awesome restaurant patrons or a freaking nightmare. I'm a former waitress and bartender turned RN. The same thing happens with patients. Counting bills quickly. I learned when in Uzbekistan, a place where the highest denomination was at 1,000, but a meal at a restaurant cost 20 to 30k. Retail management without machines can do the same. The bigger stores all have bill counters and weigh their change. Remembering oddly specific details about someone's past. I tend to remember the odd crap people say for years, and it tends to freak them out. The worst reactions are when someone was just making something up for a story and have no memory of saying it in the first place. This is me. I remember conversations, jokes, dates, hangouts, text messages, meme exchanges, and so on and so forth. And it is weird when ages have passed and I make a joke or say like, hey, like that one time we were talking about X, and they have zero idea because it was literally 18 months ago. I've also bought gifts for people based off this stuff and they just end up confused and not sure of the relevance. Yeah, the narrator is also one of those weirdos. I'll forget any number of important things like what I'm meant to be doing, where my keys are, paying my bills, passwords, or my day-to-day schedule, but hot damn if I can't just randomly remember specific jokes or one-liners that my friends did from a decade ago. Honestly, I think I'd be happier just remembering that other stuff. Being able to quickly convert between ounces and grams, 16 ounces to a pound, 20 more to a kilo. I have a friend who could memorize numbers, especially plates of vehicles. He'd then be able to recall it after months in totally random conversations. Many people asked how he'd know he wasn't bluffing. Here's the thing. I know this guy from college. You can imagine how all of us would have gone to lengths to verify such things. Also, it works out to be useful in many situations, and he'd be somewhat of a personal Google to a few of us. Like, hey, I can't seem to find this guy's number. Do you remember? Noticing cameras. A friend of mine does that. He can point out any camera in public spaces. I developed a similar skill while playing Ingress. Portals are everywhere. Strep throat tests. I used to get strep throat a lot as a kid, so by the time I was tested for it as a 20-year-old, I had the process down. They stick in the big popsicle stick to hold down your tongue, and then they swab the back of your throat while you try not to gag. Well, I happened to be tested by a relatively new, young, attractive doctor this particular time, and when he complimented me on doing well on the test and not gagging, my response was, "Thanks, I've had practice." If not suspicious, it was at the very least mortifying after realizing the implication of what I'd said. As a nurse who's always performed these, any adult that could do a throat swab with zero gag, cough, or flinch always made me wonder. I've forgotten my apartment key so many times to the point where I can pick my own lock. People find that suspicious. So you'd remember to take your lockpick kit with you, but not your keys? I mean, a lockpick kit works on a lot of doors, but their key will only open one. Being able to recognize pills. No, I'm not a dealer. I just work in a pharmacy and some of them are very recognizable. Remembering things about them that they forgot. I told my friend I was getting a job at a store we knew. She told me, I think I've been there before. Then I told her she has, and I repeated the conversation we had word for word. I got some weird looks from her. I'm good at stuff like that. My friend and I were talking about a hike and I mentioned that we've already done it. She said we hadn't yet. So I told her the approximate date and what we did before and after and what we talked about on it. And yet if you asked me what I had for dinner yesterday, I would struggle. Staying calm. The trick is being so overwhelmingly numb and devoid of emotion that you just aren't invested in the outcome. Getting kids to trust me within seconds of meeting me. I'm a pediatric nurse. That seems like a useful skill to have, but there's no way I'm going to have how to get kids to trust me within seconds of meeting me in my Google search history. In case anyone is genuinely interested, kids are smarter than adults take them for and have a keen sense of when someone's only interacting with them out of enlightened self-interest. The main way to get kids to trust you is to interact with them and respect their agency, and for them to understand that all of your interactions with them are only for their best interest. Kids can totally pick up on the vibes of people who see them as cute stuffed animals or whatever rather than as humans who deserve a level of respect. My source? Experience as a head lifeguard, digital English tutor, and karate instructor. Microsoft Excel. I found that by taking over reporting from others because it took them so much time. I'd automate it to pull from the databases where the previous owner was spending 2 hours a day of copying and pasting hundreds of cells. A couple of hours work once, and I hit a button. Done. I'd use it to release right away, even with a script to open, refresh, save, and email it. This caused people to not trust the numbers, so now I still pull all the data, but I hold off on releasing it for a bit, and even a bit late on occasion. I see people wanting to learn Excel. I did a lot of trial and error learning. I'm in my mid-50s, so I have some time under my belt. Learning a simple programming language helps. I learned BASIC as a kid and Pascal and Fortran later. VB is the most useful at this point though. In Excel, you can add a developer tab, Google it, it will show you how to add it to your Excel. You can record macros that record your steps when you do things like insert a column, copy a row and stuff. You can then see how it works. Mr. Excel, not to be confused with Miss or MS Excel, is a great resource. Also, learn VLOOKUPs as they're very helpful and you can get how other formulas work. Cleaning liquid spills. If Junior knocks over their glass or the cat gets too close and personal with the fish tank, most people just tend to throw a bathroom towel over it or get out the wet vac. Not super effective and it tends to allow time for staining. Some salt, aerosolized carpet foam, and some paper towels will clean up anything like it was never there and in record speed, and all for the low price of making people uncomfortable as they imagine you as a mob cleaner. For extra points, use these same methods to clean blood out of carpets or off cheap porous tiles. People's faces are funny as heck. Man, where was this blood cleaning advice when I needed it last month? The premise of this video is literally how the series Psych starts. The main character, Sean Spencer, is too good at being observant, and because he kept sending tips to the local police, they called him in for questioning because they thought he might be involved in all these crimes, so he has to pretend to be a psychic. I can't recommend the show Psych enough, guys, it's terrific. Walking quietly. There's a couple of you freakily stealthy weirdos in this video, huh? My old flatmate is one of those. I swear the amount of times that man has slowly apparated behind me, asked me if I've seen the scissors or something, and turned a bunch of my hairs grey defies belief. Being unbothered by blood and guts. I'm a veterinarian. I've spent days up to my elbows in all manner of bodies and parts and fluids. I can watch surgery or necropsy videos over lunch. I did an eye surgery on Tuesday and somebody had to catch the new kid. The big ones aren't allowed to get faint, it's very inconvenient. As a related aside, when a nice young lady at the bank says, "Oh my god, there's blood on your shirt," assuring her that it isn't your own, in fact, offers no reassurance. Shuffling cards. Yep, that one time you show that you can deal from the bottom, suddenly you're out at the weekly poker game. When you instinctively go to private search on your phone. I use my private search for everything except my adult movies. If Google's gonna track my data, then Google can watch me whack the mule. Hiding things. Well, I meant keeping secrets just as much as I meant physically hiding things. Knowing a friend's schedule, especially for close friends. I've remembered their schedules just from them randomly bringing up what classes they have in conversations. Fabricating stories. I had a workmate that used to do that all the time while I was on the International Space Station. I will remember your car and every detail about your car before I can remember your name. People that are able to drastically change their personality or the way they talk and act when around different groups of people or someone else arrives. For me, it's a coping mechanism that I developed from a childhood of mistreatment and neglect. You have to be a different person to avoid the triggers, and sometimes it just catches you as an adult. Lying. And I'm not talking like the everyday white lies of like, "How are you? I'm fine." No, I mean the Kaiser Soze kind of lying. I am super good at lying when the need arises. Like very good on the spot, and it freaked out an old friend of mine. I'm just super creative and I have a worst-case scenario mind, so I can think of a lot of possibilities. Lockpicking. My friend got locked out, so I grabbed the bobby pins out of my hair and just started picking away. He thought I was a criminal. It was a master lock. Googling, oddly. People find it very unsettling how quickly I can learn stuff that untrained people aren't supposed to know. All I did was Google search until I found the info and then gave it a try. Avoiding people. Everyone assumes that I'm up to something because I spend so much time alone and out of sight. Looking left, then right, then left, then right without turning your head. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Moving through unreasonably tight and cluttered spaces normally. My friends and I used to hang out at an extremely cluttered warehouse that belonged to a hoarder friend. It was full to the point where moving at all without getting stuck on something or causing a garbage avalanche was difficult. And there I was, just gliding through hills of hoarded garbage like some kind of ghost. They told me it was creepy. Being happy. Everyone always thinks I'm on something. I mean, I am, but I'm happy for other reasons too. Telling almost instantly by feel if a bill is real or counterfeit, though I think more people should definitely be able to do this. Lower denomination US counterfeit bills can look amazing, but the feel is just always off. Guessing passwords. I had a video games addiction during my young age. My parents changed the password once a week because I kept guessing it. When they say a word in a weird way, paying close attention to their facial expressions, listening to their tapping, the sound of the keyboard, they're all things that help me. But the key is to know how that person thinks. I'm also able to remember most passwords that I've seen once inadvertently. Navigating government bureaucracy. They're penetrating the bureaucracy, Bob! Speaking French. There's always something suspicious about people who can speak French fluently. So this is why some people think that I am suspicious. Go to any public place in Ottawa and it's mind-boggling. People will have conversations where one guy says something in English and the other guy responds in French, then a third guy switches back and forth several times every sentence. I don't know how they do it or what they're all up to. Knife sharpening. I don't think knife sharpening in itself is suspicious. However, it depends if you're sitting on the porch doing it and just impassively making eye contact with the people who rock up to your house. That behavior has some connotations. I think someone who uses knives a lot, like a woodworker, butcher, or chef, that's fine. Thugs? Like, how often does a thug stab a guy? Like once a month? That's not nearly as much as a butcher. Yeah, it can be super creepy when you're into knives. I enjoy kitchen knives. I read about them a lot. I have a collection. I'm fairly good at knife work and I sharpen regularly. And people think I'm a serial killer. My friends and I played this drinking game where you take the paper bag from the store, put it on the floor standing up, and you have to bend down on one foot and grab it with your teeth. Each round you trim a few centimeters off the top and keep lowering the bag until there's a winner. One of my very unathletic friends at the time would easily win every round. It would just be him, and he was flexible enough to get the bag only 6 inches off the ground. People were super impressed, and I joked, it's all of that practice from sucking your own eggplant. And the look he gave me, combined with the awkward laugh, made me think I might have been closer to the truth than I would have hoped. Being able to recite the alphabet backwards with speed. Tying knots. I can untie them really fast. I can even untie a jumble of earphones in the dark or with my eyes closed. I don't know if this is the same suspicion as being able to tie the knots or not. Tearing boxes. I had a female coworker who knew how to tear huge boxes like it was nothing. Like in 2 seconds, there's nothing left out of the box. First time she did it, she got a lot of strange looks. She probably worked fast food or maybe a grocery store. I mean, I got really good at breaking down boxes at McDonald's in high school. Fairly easy to do with your bare hands if you know how. Meat trimming. Breaking into someone's car. A few years ago, I was new at a job and a coworker locked her keys in her car. I got the door open in under a minute. The security guard watched me and had some concerns with the speed at which I'd opened that car without damaging it. The truth of the matter is that the guard wasn't paying attention completely to what I was doing. My first car was a 2-door sports car, and I learned about a design flaw with those cars when my idiot self locked my keys in the ignition. She had a similar car and her keys were in the ignition, so I took advantage of that design flaw to get her door open without damage to the car. I drove multiple different vehicles in my youth and locked myself out of each and every one of them. As such, I also became proficient in unlocking all cars. It really weirded a few people out and made a few people think I'm some sort of criminal, but I wouldn't change a thing as it allowed me to save a baby one time. I was working at a pawn shop, and the mum accidentally shut the door while removing her TV from the back seat, with the baby still in the car. In a panic, her and my manager and a few good customers all tried to help her as I finished up with my customer. 15-ish minutes later, when I finished my work, I heard the mother freaking out on the phone as the soonest anyone could come unlock her car was 50 minutes. I ran outside and unlocked the car in 1 minute flat, came back in and told the lady she could cancel the rescue and hang up now as the other guardian came in behind me carrying the baby. The mother was so happy she gave me a hug with so much love and appreciation that I'll never forget. Also, she gave me $20, which I said was unnecessary, but she insisted $20 for a quick rescue was the lowest she was willing to go after she got quoted $60 for the 50-minute job. Recognizing sounds. I've knowledge of pretty much everything happening around me through the sounds. That's the same for me, but it's the scent. If someone says they can smell smoke, I can tell them it's the smell of house insulation burning. Being a good listener. People just kind of assume that you're a stalker. Cleaning out stains. I cut my hand pretty badly once and blood got into my white shirt. I tried to clean it myself, but the stain never got out. I told my mum, who told me to bring it back with me when I came back for Christmas break, and she cleaned it. And by the way, she didn't even bleach it. Her ability to clean stains so well since then has been suspicious to me. Salt will get almost anything out of anything. Using your peripherals. I've become really good with mine. Another answer is looking back and forth. When multiple people stare at me, I look at one person, then the next, and repeat until they either ask me what I'm doing or they stop staring at me. Remembering things for other people. I pick up random things in conversations, not necessarily in conversation with me. I like to listen. I'll wish you good luck on that special thing tomorrow. I'll tell you happy birthday. I'll tell you not to forget something. It's saved myself and people around me from getting into crappy situations. Imagine a guy at work who tells you not to forget your wife's birthday next week. Yeah, I'm that guy. ADD has taught me to remember the things that I pay attention to. I'm very good at getting detailed information in my peripheral vision. I don't have to be looking directly at someone to study them. It makes me sound like a prevert, but it's a skill I developed because of working and living in situations where letting someone know that you're watching them can have bad consequences. But so is being ignorant of what they were doing. It's really frickin' handy. Also, somewhat related, reading upside down has had its benefits. Being able to strike up a rapport with random people. After someone else sees you do it, they act like you're a weird Jedi or something. Top-notch marksmanship. Again, I think context is important here. I think if you're just a guy with an above-average score at the local range, nobody will notice. If you shoot 5 perfect kill shots in a row and then make a slowly, deeply satisfied noise at the end, and then make eye contact with someone, yeah, you've probably just lost a person who'll hang out with you. Spatial awareness. I can look at something and tell you whether or not it will fit into a wall, into a box or car, through a hallway or stairwell. I was at a shipping store a few months ago and a guy was in line behind me trying to figure out which size box to get for the box he was trying to fit into it. I pointed at a specific size and said, "That one, but only if you put your box in this side up." It slid in perfectly and he gave me the weirdest look. Somehow though, I always seem to bump into the corners of tables. Pouring the perfect amount of milk into a bowl of cereal. This is so complex and I love it. Finding a lot of information about someone online, given a small amount of information about said person to go off. I'm known for this among my friends and they think it's creepy as frick, but it's surprisingly easy and honestly useful. Speaking fluent foreign language with someone with no explanation before or after. An old coworker of mine, my partner on the ambulance, spoke fluent Chinese with a patient and their family. In China, this would probably be a no biggie, but being in Ohio and me not knowing she knew anything more than English was very weird. She just acted like it was normal. Good at finding purposefully hidden items. Thanks to my parents hiding my devices when I was a kid. I even put them back after I used them. It got to the point where I had to watch out for small stuff like specifically placed objects, which are essentially traps my parents put to see if I opened something up to get it. It ranged from hairpins to even clean-wiped surfaces and more. Lying. Wait, no, that's wrong. The better you are, the less likely anyone notices. The problem comes up when you use your skills to help somebody out, and they later remember just how effective and seamless your cover story was. In my line of work, sales, there's a method called mirroring, where you try to mimic the customer's tone and energy to be more relatable. I've spent many years trying to read people, and I'm introverted as it gets. So I like to think I do this very well, with my fellow men being the easiest to read. Well, my employer noticed this and started referring to it as an advanced sales tactic. They pulled me into a Zoom with other employees who suck at closing sales and had me try to teach it to them. Anything with a computer. If you're good enough, with literally anything to do with computers, people will think you're able to hack computers. They also think you're able to fix any problem with their computers, which is equally detrimental on its own.
What are your dating regrets? Getting so caught up in the fun early stages of the relationship and planning activities for dates that I forgot to just relax and be myself. Take it a week at a time and see how things went. Pretty sure it made me seem too pushy, so things didn't end very well for me. Lesson learned. Chill the F out. The holy trinity of bad dating. 1. Not listening when they told me they weren't interested. 2. Not listening when they told me they were crazy. 3. Not listening to myself when I realized I didn't want to be with someone anymore. This is the first time I've ever spelled it out for myself like this, and I think I'm seeing a pattern.
That I admittedly hid some of my hobbies and interests because I was scared they looked dorky. As soon as I stopped hiding it, I met my partner.
Don't be afraid to share your hobbies or your interests to your girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, whatever. Just, if they like you for who you are. And if they don't like you because of something as silly as a hobby or an interest that you have, then they don't really like you. Not taking chances with various girls and women throughout my life when I had the opportunities to. And I didn't try to date more in my early 20s, and now I'm in my mid-30s with a combined relationship experience of a little over a year. I basically have the romantic intelligence of a 16-year-old.
Shooting more shots and being way more confident in my 20s. I was a very good-looking guy with very low self-esteem. Funny to look back at now I'm 46.
So far, my biggest regret was moving halfway across the country with someone, and when I was struggling to adjust to that location, they refused to move a few hours for me to a different location. That really hurt. Felt like I gave up so much for them, and it turns out they wouldn't do the same for me. I'll never move for love again. Another thing about this relationship, and a warning to others, is that if a person says they hadn't spent enough time being single before y'all got together, just break it off so they can do their thing. While it might be hard to give up on something good, the feeling of regret for not getting to experience more opportunities and meet more people will constantly be in the back of their head. I could go on, but the point is to have clear communication. That also means that if someone tells you something, actually listen to what they're saying and don't just hear what you want to hear. I always used to say, always give them at least one date to make their case, and you can decide after if you want to continue. Some people are so obviously a walking red or black flag of personality issues that even a single afternoon will be too much time to waste. Just decline and move on. 2. Don't stay with someone because of how they used to make you feel or because you owe them for something they did a long time ago. Staying in a dying relationship doesn't make breaking up later any better and doesn't make you happy now. Also, not my personal mess up, but marriage and or kids won't fix a weak relationship. If it's dying and nobody really cares, get it over with and move on. Number 3. Not mine, but I've seen it firsthand enough. Some people have issues, and while these aren't deal breakers themselves, you shouldn't enter into a dating relationship for the purpose to be free of therapy or to fix them/date people that will fix you. People need to be in a place where they are able to date others, not go looking for someone to fix them or prey on broken people. And if you are with someone that becomes too much baggage, you can stay to help, you can leave if it gets above your pay grade, but you have to make sure you are taken care of too. I give this a 7 out of 10. Solid advice. The fact that I'm not very good at it. Giving my best to the wrong person. Letting them get away with bad behaviors. Being overly romantic and giving to someone who doesn't do the same. Overly apologizing even when I didn't do anything inherently wrong. Begging someone to stay. I screwed over someone who truly loved me. Pushed her away when it was my time to step up. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. She was such a catch. Married now. I should have been more open about my feelings with those I was interested in back around high school and early adulthood because I'm pretty sure a few may have been interested in me, but things just never got started. I should have cut communication once I found out she had been cheating on me since the start of our relationship, instead of doing some on-again, off-again bullcrap for a decade or so. You know, as someone who's personally witnessed very many on-again, off-again relationships, they are one of the most frustrating things to bear witness to, especially when your friend goes from top of the world to as low as can possibly be in such a short amount of time. And now, I'm not saying that people can't make mistakes in relationships, get back together, and then, actually learn from that mistake and be better, but, you need to have a certain degree of self-awareness and recognize what the actual issues are. Like, if you're sat at home, you're like, damn, I want to get back with my girl, or damn, I want to get back with my man, just have a freaking anime character arc for at least 5 months or something. Think about what the actual issues were. Think about yourself. Think about them. Judge whether or not it's worth it. Let that anime character arc really set in, Despite many warnings from people trying to help me, I put all my eggs in the same basket. Married young and devoted myself to someone thinking that devotion would always be reciprocated. But apparently people change even if you don't. Always be prepared for the other shoe to drop, I guess is my advice. Kinda cynical, I know, but recent experiences taught me a lesson I never wanted to learn. Went on a really great date recently. We really hit it off. We were at this bar until closing, just talking. He wanted to come back to mine, and I thought, hey, he seems really sweet, and we are having a lot of fun together. Why not? He stays up for hours talking and laughing, and we wind up doing it. We continued talking even after that, and we were up until 6 a.m. The next day, I wrote, hey, had a great time. I'd be happy to see you again. And he said he also had a great time and how fun I was, but he didn't want to date because he didn't feel it. I was sad, but you can't help it. I asked if he wanted to be friends, and days go by. He ends up just reading the message. No response. I know it's a stereotype for men to do this kind of thing, but I actually have never experienced this before. I've only had guys be really upfront and honest, or I could tell they were just trying to get in my pants. So now I'm left embarrassed and feel slightly used. So I regret that. Dating someone who always wanted things their way, my life scheduled around what they wanted to do, thinking they would change and it would balance out in time. They were selfish and self-centered. That was the core issue, not a scheduling one. I wish I would never have been exposed to this hookup culture, being made to believe that once I was of legal drinking age that I need to go and have one-night stands, etc. I'm so numb inside that I just continued to date and I don't know how to attach. I'm pretty convinced at this point I wouldn't know love if it slapped me in the face. Well, that is, geez. That made me kind of sad. I had not one, not two, but 3 girls I had huge crushes on out their feelings for me on the last day of high school before moving on to college elsewhere, essentially saying, you should have asked me out. Never could pick up on signals. Ended up meeting my wife and mother of my 3 kids almost 15 years now on a dating app after college, so it all worked out for the better. That I should have jumped at the chance with my current girlfriend 6 years ago. We went to the movies as friends and I really liked her. She casually asked me if I actually wanted to date her. I said that she was a catch, but I was too old for her. I really didn't want to be the creepy older guy, so we are now together 6 years later because I at least had enough social skills not to mess up the friendship in the meantime. Dating someone I liked the idea of but not being into them. She was a professional, a grown adult who could communicate her desires. She was enthusiastic about her sex and very much enjoyed one another's company. We would have been fantastic friends with benefits. I just wasn't that into her and she was into me. I knew it, but rather than being fair to her and ending it on transitioning to a friends with benefits situation, I kept it going. Eventually, she dumped me because she was jealous of my female friends. Nothing was going on, but she recognized that they were harming her mental health and didn't want to put up with seeing photos of me hanging out with them. I don't regret anything because I believe you make the choices right for you at the time based on the information you are presented with. Dating her taught me that it's not fair to treat people like that, and I was voluntarily single for 5 years, rather than date people I was only casually interested in. I learned a lot from her, so no regrets, but I do wish I had ended it better. Being too afraid to look like a fool. Only dated superficially, so dated lots of women I didn't actually have things in common with. Invented a single me and a boyfriend me. Do not do this. Always ended up being a boy toy and not a boyfriend and not speaking up about it. My biggest dating regret is expecting the character of my dating options to be better than my own level of personal development. I guess this person means that they always expected the person they were dating to be more mature or just know better than them. I'm not quite sure what they mean. I feel like I've got an inkling of what they are talking about, but I'm not quite there. Chasing. As a woman, pursuing men always felt wrong, but sadly, I've always had to do it because I'm painfully average and invisible. I could stand in front of a beige wall and you'd only see a beige wall. It leads to nothing great anyway. I always end up with someone who's desperately in love with, you guessed it, a very beautiful woman I will never be like. I am someone you pick only if you've made peace with the fact that the one you want will never be yours, so you've decided to settle for less. Dating is absolutely crap for me. If I knew that I'd have to do all the chasing and all the work and all the pathetic attempts to be the best version of myself, which still isn't good enough, I'd have never dated a man. Being alone and asexual isn't all that bad. Okay, you I feel very bad for because it sounds like your confidence has been utterly crushed, and I don't believe anyone deserves to feel that way, especially about their physical appearance, which you just can't help. I had several relationships with very insecure and unstable people with a lot of mental illnesses, and I can say out of all of the crap that I lived through so far, these relationships were the absolute worst part of it. I was always just too open-minded and tolerant, especially knowing how hard life can be with aforementioned issues, and didn't want to close the door to the potential person of my life. But after my last disaster of a partner, I don't even have enough trust in other people left to consider a relationship with them. I slightly regret hamming it up so much in the video earlier on because, damn, this is getting kind of dire and sad. I tried dating 2 girls once. I couldn't handle splitting my emotions, so I dumped one and committed to the other. That girl dumped me, and the other girl wouldn't date me again. Comedy. Oh, also I remember bringing girls to my room when I was younger, them laying in my bed with me and me not doing anything because I was just a little too respectful. Didn't end up with the vast majority of them. One even bluntly commented on how I should have made moves. Cringe, man. I matched with this girl on Tinder a few years back. In our conversation, she told me she was on a temporary visit in the country and that she's staying at a hotel. We agreed we'd meet outside the hotel and go for a drink of coffee at a nearby Starbucks. When I reached the front of the hotel, she didn't exactly walk out of the hotel, but in fact, someone had dropped her at the hotel. That was the first red flag. As I greet her and introduce myself, I suggest we walk for a bit and make our way to Starbucks, but she was adamant of a nearby cafe that she's pointed out across the street, and I was like, okay, sure, why not? The rest of the day was comprised of just getting to know her and what she's doing here on a visit, and while this was happening, she proceeded to order wine numerous times and kept walking back and forth to the restroom. Second red flag. And by the end of our 2-hour-long date, the bill came, and I presume it was going to be at least a 100+ billing, but to my shock, it ended up costing me $560 plus, and I reluctantly paid for it as it is customary where I'm from that guys pay the bill if you're the one who invited the person to the date. And when the bill was paid, she wanted to go clubbing, and I told her, sure, let's meet tomorrow night and go, but I just ended up blocking her and deleting her contact info. I found out later that this is a common scam that happens in my country, and apparently the cafe and her are both in cahoots. She drags in the victims, and the cafe artificially inflates the prices of their menu to overcharge me. The worst part? This was the first date I ever went on, and it took a lot of courage for me to put myself out there, and after that date, it frickin' broke me, and I felt so violated that I haven't gone on a date since. Not dating in my 20s, for one. My early life was something of a sob story because of a butthole doctor in my teens. I had a serious, life-threatening illness when I was a teenager, but we caught it in time and treated it. But this doctor told my mom point-blank right in front of me, "You realize he's going to die from this, right? This kid won't live to see 30. This will probably come back and we won't be able to treat it." Mom fired him from my case after that and a few horrible missteps of bedside manner. I'm 44, by the way, and fine. It never came back, but it screwed me up for years. I lived my late teens and 20s like I was gonna die soon. I didn't invest anything in my life. I lived it up. I partied. I screwed around a lot. Why would I bother getting into a relationship if I was going to die? I mean, sure, I dated a couple times, but nothing more than a couple months, and the problem was, I got so used to being alone and self-sufficient that when I got into my 30s, I tried to date more, but lacked a lot of relationship skills and just really struggled being a part of a couple. Being a partner. Cheating. Don't do it, kids. It's not worth it. I've loved 4 women in my life and not a single one of them would look my way, and knowing it's my fault makes it 100 times worse. I'm sorry, Amanda. Not researching the guy first. There was a guy I went on a few dates with last year. Really liked him. He ended up dating someone else. A few nights ago, I decided to find out his last name because he never told me. When I found out his last name and looked him up online, I found articles about how he sexually assaulted a 7-year-old girl he was babysitting. The dude only served 4 months. I dodged an absolute missile. God damn it, where are the Gary Plochets of the world when you need them? I'm 22 and I have yet to date anyone, so I guess my biggest regret in dating would be not having dated anyone. I suffered something I've always called the weirdness, which is me bottling things up and ending up in major anxious episodes which have destroyed relationships and made some very difficult. It also created either an over-attachment or rejection of people. My style is anxious preoccupied attachment, and it's the first time in 46 years I've been able to give the weirdness a proper name. I regret not hooking up with women before meeting my boyfriend. I feel like he's the one, got me, so I will never know what it's like to sleep with a woman, and it does make me sad sometimes. I also feel like a threesome would ruin our relationship, so that's out of the question. You know, that's absolutely wonderful. I'm really happy that you think this guy is the one, and good luck running away from your gay thoughts. Taking back my ex after she cheated. Don't ever do that. It'll never be the same. So many, either not understanding that they're not interested or worse, not understanding that they are interested. I could have lost my virginity years before if my teenage brain wasn't immune to logic and not so subtle hints. On the other hand, I'm beginning to be a believer of the theory that somehow my life is how it should be. If I had gotten together with that sexy girl that threw herself at me when my friend wanted to leave, I probably would have been a father at 19, which never in my life looked or looks as a good idea. I have too many. One is simply that I took too long to start doing it and then wasn't very good at it and struggled with it for years. I didn't date in high school or even try, and then in college I found myself getting a little older and having none of the experience that most of my peers seem to have. I eventually ended up in a relationship with an older, 30-ish woman with kids. I want to be clear, I don't think that relationship was in any way exploitive, but it just wasn't right for me in the long run, and I never had the experience of having a normal college girlfriend. Maybe it was out of reach for me. I don't know. After that, there were a lot of dry spells. Not just sex-wise, in terms of dating. It eventually worked out and I'm married, but I just wish the road there was easier. I don't know why I needed to go through so many rough, lonely patches. There is a particular situation that haunts me though. I had a date that went well. We were both in our mid-20s. To set the stage here, a lunch/coffee date turned into, hey, let's walk around for a while, which turned into going to an art museum, which eventually turned into getting dinner because we'd spent a lot of the day together. We seemed to have a good vibe and I thought things were going really well. Unfortunately, because of what you can infer from my first paragraph about my own timidity with dating, I eventually sought out a lot of advice, mostly on the internet, that turned out to be not great. I had been used to asking girls if they wanted me to kiss them at the end of a date, but I'd gotten the feedback that a lot of women would find that to be too timid compared to just going for it, and therefore a turnoff, that it seemed too weak. So I finally reasoned, hey, this is going well, as we went to the train and departed. I leaned in and kissed her. After I pulled back, I realized she was mortified. We walked away, but since our respective trains were not showing up yet, I decided to walk back to her and ask if she was okay. She explained that while she was okay, she was incredibly embarrassed because she had never been kissed before. I felt horrible. The train station was hardly the best setting for someone's first kiss, but also I hadn't realized she was so nervous about it and may not have wanted to do it that quickly. We talked a bit afterwards, but our messaging eventually petered out. A lot of friends, including women, told me that while yes, I probably should have asked, I shouldn't feel too bad about it, and that it was probably just her embarrassment, that it may have even been a relief for her in the long run that she got it over with. But I still feel horrible and still wish sometimes I could find her again and apologize. Asking a 22-year-old who looked like Nicole Kidman if I could use her back door. The next day she slapped me and never spoke to me again. Oh my. Trying to be the cool GF. As a teenage girl in the dating world, people see setting boundaries as the crazy GF who doesn't let their partner do anything. So I wanted to refrain from that as far as possible because I was 15 going on 16 trying to impress this 18-year-old. Boy, was I wrong. We needed those boundaries. I let him walk all over me so much for the first 6 months of our relationship that setting up boundaries in later time was a lot harder and frustrating for both of us. I'm now 17, turning 18, and even though it's only been 2 years, I'm really happy with my progression and sense of awareness. So many signals I didn't respond to because I thought, what if I'm wrong? 1. Persevering too long with someone who wasn't good to me because even though he treated me terribly, we could have so much fun together. 2. Then having learned my lesson, persevering too long with someone who was good to me because even though we never had much fun together, he treated me well. Finally, I realized that I had overcorrected and I met my husband who both treats me well and who I can have fun with. Plenty of other guys in there too, but I don't regret any of them. I regret taking my early dating life so seriously. We all know we're not marrying our high school partners. I should have prioritized my enjoyment of fleeting opportunities when they presented themselves because 40-year-old me isn't getting the chance to make out with Amanda Davino under the bleachers at the Friday night football game ever again. My regrets were that I struggled with social anxiety and depression during my prime years, so I forfeited much of the fun, i.e. dating, sex, relationships, that I likely would have otherwise had if I were not so marginalized by those issues. My late teens and all through my 20s and 30s were a dull blur. Kids, it's important you don't waste your life, and I don't mean do dangerous, stupid things. You should still think about what you're doing, but for the love of God, don't waste your life.
What's your horror story with bad parenting from strangers? I'll start. I'm in line at the DMV today, and I see a mom who looks, honestly, maybe 35 years old, tops. She has what can only be a 14-year-old daughter with a skin-tight t-shirt with what little cleavage she has on display, along with shorts cut so short that her butt is hanging out. This girl's on her cell phone just yelling up a storm at whoever she's talking to. It's straight out of Maury Povich, because the best part is her mom is dressed exactly the same. Her 3-year-old son is running around screaming at the top of his lungs, bumping into people, and at one point I turn my back and he runs up and hits me on the back of the leg. I had the audacity to ask the mother to watch her kid, and I get a huge mind your own business rant. She then proceeds to place him in a stroller, give him a Pepsi and some flaming hot Cheetos. Where on earth have all the parents gone? Why is it more important to be friends with your kid? What would you have done? As a side note, when she yelled at me to mind my own business, I said, fair enough. Her reply, yeah, that's right. I honestly just laughed out loud. What else can you do in that situation? If she's not going to parent the kids, it's not like you can. I used to work at a sandwich shop and there was a man in line with his son. The little boy was a bit bouncy and kept tugging on the man's arm saying, "Daddy, I need to potty real bad." And the dad would say, "In a minute, son." This went on for like 5 minutes and the little boy says, "Daddy, I have to potty now." And the man all of a sudden turns to the son and backhands him across the face and yells at him, "I told you to wait a minute." And the boy bursts into tears. My manager was right there and she was in a fury. She started yelling at the guy that he was a jerk and a horrible person and told him to get the heck out of her store and never come back. The guy was like, "Mind your own business. This is my kid and I can do what I want." And she said, "Leave now before I call the police." So the man hitched the boy up by his arm and practically dragged him out of the store. The worst part, they were less than 10 feet from the bathroom the entire time. That poor kid. I hope that kid ended up peeing all over the inside of Dad's car, because you know what? He deserves it. I used to babysit for a very dysfunctional family. The mom got knocked up on purpose so the dad wouldn't leave her. Subsequently, the dad hated the mom and resented the child. I know this because they fought about it often, publicly, and in front of the child. When I would arrive, the baby would always have a very dirty diaper that had obviously been like that for many, many hours. The baby's first word was her own name and then my name. Not mama or dada, her own 3 freaking syllable name. One day, the child had no milk or baby food left, and the mom goes to the store and comes back with just a pack of cigarettes. I asked her why she didn't get anything for the baby, and she said, "Well, I didn't have enough for both, and I don't get paid till Friday." It was Wednesday, and she was just gonna let the kid go hungry for 3 days. There was nothing edible in the house. I absolutely lost it. I don't think I've ever raged out on someone so bad in my entire life. I let her have it for a good 10 minutes, screaming at the top of my lungs the litany of reasons why she was a failure as a parent, and how I was going to call CPS if things didn't change. Anyways, she burst into tears and took the cigarettes back and came home with milk. So I guess it kinda worked. I ended up making pureed veggies at home and bringing them to the little girl for the rest of the week. They moved away shortly after that, and I always wondered what happened to the little girl. Let's just hope that your reality check to her had a long-term impact. I teach first graders, and I'm convinced most parents should not be raising children. Here's my most recent story. One day, I start afternoon class and I ask my students how they're doing. One girl says bad, and I ask her why. She says that she's hungry because she didn't eat lunch. I ask her why she hasn't had lunch yet, and she says it's because her mom was playing on the computer and she forgot to feed them, and then didn't have time. How the heck do you forget to feed a 7-year-old? Later, I brought her a snack when I had a minute because there's no way I could let a kid go without food. Unfortunately, it's always the kid that suffers in these situations. I recently had an encounter from the other end of the spectrum. I was cycling through the downtown area when I passed this Chinese lady who let her tiny kid, I'm guessing around 3 or 4 years old, walk on the street side of her. And just as I passed, this kid is making some excited gestures at his mom, happily gibbering about something while simultaneously pretty much running backwards right into the side of me, while I'm cycling at full speed. He goes flying backwards. I'm pretty sure I hit him right in the face with my knee. I stop, horrified, to check if the kid is okay. He's making this face like he's inhaling a huge breath of air to start bawling. But before I can get off the cycle or he can start screaming, his mom looks back, sees what's going on, and just snips a few words of Chinese at him. The kid just looks at her and instantly regains his composure, with obvious effort. I'm pretty sure he's hurt, but he quietly just runs right back up to her. The lady just smiles and waves at me and walks off at a brisk pace with her kid, and I'm just left standing there looking completely stumped at the bystanders who seem just as confused. That kid is going to grow up tough, even if it kills him. I'm pretty sure his mom's going to make sure of that. At the end of the day, kids will be kids and accidents happen. Things like this sometimes can't be avoided. Mom was probably of the mind that if she just doesn't acknowledge it as a bad thing, the kid won't either and they can just move on. If he was really hurt, he would've let you guys know. I used to work at a crappy gas station / convenience store. One day, a woman comes up to the counter with her daughter. She places on the counter hot dogs, hot dog buns, Kraft mac and cheese, and a 6-pack of Corona. She then asks me for a pack of cigarettes. After ringing up all the items, she swipes her debit card and it doesn't go through. She tries several times. After about the 4th time, she turns to this little girl who couldn't be older than 6. And I kid you not, she says, "Looks like you won't be eating tonight," and walks away, leaving her little girl at the counter tearing up. I was dumbfounded, and before I could say anything, the little girl yells to me, "You're a big meanie," and ran out of the door crying. Worst Thanksgiving ever. I mean, she could have tried putting some stuff back to see if it would go through at that point. Maybe the beer and cigarettes. You know, just priorities. While queuing in a coffee shop in England, 2 police officers walked in the door and went straight up to the agitated-looking woman in front of me. They started questioning her about her son, asking when she had last seen him, how old he was, what he was wearing, things like that. So it was fairly evident from the conversation that she had quite recently lost her 6-year-old kid. Both officers kept confusedly looking around the shop until the woman felt obliged to explain why she was in there, saying, "I'm gonna look for him. I'm getting me and my husband a coffee first. Go on ahead, we'll catch up." After picking up my order, I turned around to see them both sitting at a table drinking their coffees like not even a single care was given. As I walked out the door, I saw the woman peer out the front window, looking for her son, I suppose. Yeah, she doesn't seem to have as much urgency as you would think, does she? I was at the store with my dad, and we see this woman take her baby's bottle and pour Mountain Dew into it before giving it back to the kid. This is a baby, no more than a year old. My dad goes up to the lady and asks if she really just gave Mountain Dew to the kid, and she replies, "Yeah, he likes it, so I give it to him. I always give him what he wants." I fear for that generation. I was at the mall once and there was a young family in front of me. The little brat in the high chair didn't like the cheeseburger from McDonald's they got him. So he wailed and screamed and then picked up the cheeseburger and threw it at the dad, painting his shirt with ketchup and mustard. The dad then went up and got the kid another meal. I remember thinking if I did that to my dad, I wouldn't have made it out of the mall alive. Look, sometimes you gotta discipline your kid. I get it, they're your kid. But you can't let them get away with stuff like this. You're not doing them any favors. I saw a kid, probably 5 or 6, walking with his dad to soccer practice. They walk to one pitch and there's no one there, and the kid says, "Oh, sorry, we're over there," pointing to another field, maybe 150 yards away. The dad slaps the kid on the back of the head and calls him stupid and other names. Some kids have no chance. Like, come on, that's such a small mistake and you're gonna go ahead and smack the kid for it? Who's being the child in that situation? I went to a barbecue thrown by a friend of a friend. There was a woman who showed up with their ex-husband and his new girlfriend. All 3 were drunk and a bit too friendly with each other, while alternating name-calling. With them was a 2 or 3-year-old little girl, cute as can be with a real light about her. I vaguely remember them telling very inappropriate stories. When the little girl says she's hungry, the father goes and gets the bag of McDonald's he'd been grazing out of and pulls out a near-full container of fries. He proceeds to grab a few and then throw them on the lawn. The girl, without missing a beat, runs around picking them up off the lawn and eats them. He repeats this over and over in front of all the other adults, who didn't seem to take issue. It was like a game to him that he was clearly enjoying. Mom even smiled at it. My wife and I promptly left the party. This guy's treating his daughter like an animal. Someone needs to call CPS. I was lining up at the register at some store, and there was a girl around 10ish and her mom in front of me. And the little girl asked her mom if she can get the Harry Potter books because they're on sale. And the mom replies, "Why do you need the stupid books for? We got a big television you can watch the movies on." God forbid some kids want to read nowadays. I worked at the YMCA in Houston, and we did programs that reached lower income neighborhoods, the kind full of crime and poverty. One day we were letting the kids go, and we watched the rides leave as a security issue. One of the kids had made a drawing earlier that he was particularly proud of, and showed it to his dad, gleaming. The dad immediately snatched it out of the boy's hand, ripped up the drawing, and smacked the kid, in full view of us employees. He went on about how he shouldn't be doing homosexual stuff like drawing, and smacked him a couple more times. Needless to say, we called the authorities and he was arrested for child abuse, or something similar. How does this man think he's gonna get away with something like that in full view of everyone who's very much interested in this kid's well-being? I've been a nanny for a little over 5 years, so I've seen my fair share of crazy families. But there's one babysitting job that sticks out more than any other. The ex's mom referred me to her hairdresser, so when she called me, I was pretty excited to go to her house. I was watching a 4-year-old boy that everyone raved about being so adorable and fun. He sure was cute, but fun is not the word I would use to describe that night. She left telling me she would be home anywhere between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Came home at 4 a.m. and got mad at me for falling asleep on the couch. The kid had the worst ADHD I've ever experienced before, and there was absolutely no food or drink in the fridge, other than margarita mix and a 2-week-old half-gallon of milk, which he said he drank earlier that day. All of the sippy cups that they owned smelled like rotten eggs. I felt so bad for this boy. I looked through every drawer to see if I could find anything to give him, and all I managed to find was workout supplements, steroids, needles, and lots of different pills like phentermine and ephedrine. I bought him some dinner, got them a fresh gallon of milk, and never came back to that house again. Another case of the parents are crappy people and the kid suffers. We went to a soft play center with my niece the other day. One boy managed to find this big red ball and jam it at the bottom of the slide. His little brother then proceeded to go down the slide and get stuck. Chaos ensued for a while as they tried to get the boy out. The parents were going on and on at the staff. Eventually, they swindled a free drink out of the place. Then they gave their daughter a lollipop, no food is allowed in the actual play area, and she ran around the play area and climbed the stairs to come down the slide. We were watching all of this whilst keeping an eye on my niece, basically getting her to stay out of the way. The parents made barely any effort to get the lolly off her. She then went into this little viewing thing made of perspex with the lolly in her mouth and was dribbling. Her drool then proceeded to drip down to where we were sitting. We promptly left after being completely grossed out. This is by far the nastiest family I've ever come across, and a very good argument for contraception. Yeah, some parents are a walking billboard for reasons to not have kids. In high school, I made friends with this really shy guy who stuttered and was generally socially awkward, but really nice. He was also a genius pianist. He was taking 2 years for one at his piano courses. He was composing amazing pieces at the age of 16, and I truly admired his ability. His parents, however, didn't see it that way. They were both engineers, and they considered his love for music despicable, worthless, and a bad habit that needs to be uprooted. When he was practicing at home, they tossed old shoes at him, and they made him sleep on the floor if he played for more than 2 hours. Once a professor from the musical academy called them to tell them that they have an amazing son and that he could be famous one day. They hung up the phone. When high school was over, he really wanted to apply to the musical academy, but they didn't let him. They said that the only courses they would ever fund were the ones in math and geography, the qualifying subjects for the economy university. So he had to go there for his higher education. I haven't seen him in a good while, but I heard he went abroad. I hope he escaped those jerks for good. It really sucks to see kids who have an amazing amount of talent and parents that just don't support them the way they need to. My mom is a teacher at a primary school in England in a really bad part of town. The stories she brings home are appalling, from kids who have never been read to or even talked to much who come to school age 5 without being able to speak in proper sentences. Also, the saddest things often involve parenting from the previous generation. The standout event being a mother who came into My Mother, the music teacher, and SBS, that she doesn't know any nursery rhymes to sing to her children, which was one of the set tasks for bonding type homework. She spent an hour with that woman teaching her Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I was at a mall playground with the wife and 2 kids. My son was 3 years old and was running around with about 20 other kids, most of them his age. Keep in mind that kids can't be taller than 3 feet to play in this little playground. There was this one fat woman and she was watching about 4 kids, and all of them were taller than 4 feet and they were playing rough, pushing each other around and whatnot. My son goes around the area that they were playing at and starts playing by himself, and one of the kids tries to kick my son. My wife, who's 5'2" and 100 pounds, calmly walks that way with my 3-month-old daughter and tells the woman, who's like 5'6" and about 250 pounds, to watch her kids because they were playing a little rough. She said, "Okay, whatever." My wife stays there and watches just in case something happens. The older kid goes running towards my son and pushes him. My wife tells the kid, who's about 9, not to push my son. The woman flips the heck out and starts screaming, "Don't scream at my baby," and blah blah blah. My wife tells her that she should pay more attention to her kids and how they're too old to be playing around smaller kids. She tells my wife to shut up and not to tell her how to raise her kids. My wife starts walking away and the woman starts getting louder. So from my seat 15 feet away, I yell at her, "You do not talk to my wife that way. Your kids are misbehaving and you're doing nothing about it. Learn how to be a good parent." She shuts up and looked at me in disbelief. She didn't know I was with my wife, or that I would talk to her like that in front of so many people. She then started to talk crap again, and we ignored her. After 5 minutes of her ridiculousness, my wife got the security guard and she got her butt kicked out of the place. 15 minutes after, she passes doing threatening signs at my wife, but when I looked at her, she stopped and looked away. I was seriously raging and about to beat her, but I did my best to calm down and be a responsible adult. I totally get it, my friend. Interactions like that get your blood boiling, especially if someone's gonna go threatening me and mine. "If you don't wear these pink shoes I'm buying you, I'm gonna cut all your rabbits' heads off." Sadly, that was actually my dad talking to a 10-year-old me in a thrift store. He then proceeded to get into an argument with a woman who said, "You're the most horrible person I've ever heard in my life," and called her a man-hater and a lesbian before we finally left. Compared to some of the other stuff, that's relatively mild. Yeah, my childhood sucked. I was at a movie theater and we had just walked in and sat down in our seats since the theater we were going to was open. An employee, probably around 35 years old, walks in and asks everyone, a small handful of people, to leave for just a few minutes so we can clean it. He had a stutter and some type of mild disability. The employee was super friendly and nice about having to ask us all to leave. This dad with a beer belly and cut off sleeves who was there with his 3 preteen and teen kids started making fun of the employee and the way he spoke, joking, mimicking, and trying to get his kids to join in with him. I chewed that jerk out. How are you gonna set an example like that for your kids? This guy's being super friendly, working hard, and you're gonna give him a hard time because of the way he speaks, which he can't control, by the way. Some people really shouldn't breed. I worked as a waitress for about 4 years. One family was very rude and demanding every time they ate there. Their children, ranging from 5 to 10 years old, would snap at me or shake their cups to get my attention. When we didn't come right away, the children would literally start screaming, while the parents laughed. Another family had a 12-year-old daughter that would take all the sugar packets from the table and play with them. Much of the sugar ended up on the floor or on the table. Once I figured out what she was doing, I would go take away the basket before they sat down. Lastly, I only saw this family in there once, but it was a tatted up gangster couple. The mom was no older than 23, and they had 4 kids. Let them run around the restaurant untamed and basically ignored them the entire time. They made a mess of the tables and didn't even tip. Oh, and they also tried stealing quarters off this cancer research donation thing we had. I work customer service at Loblaws part-time while I go to school. Lucky me. I've grown resentful of people. One day, I encountered a lady who was absolutely flabbergasted that her milk, on which the expiry date was clearly written, had gone bad. She was going on and on complaining. Had the store manager called down, the front end manager, and the dairy manager too. Once this whole ordeal was handled, she turns to her 14-year-old daughter and says, "Now that's how it's done." As someone who worked in customer service and retail for a good portion of their life, I hate people like this. Don't be teaching your kids to be the same jerk you are. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think it should be mandatory that every person is to work at least 2 years in customer service, just to learn to be a little humble.
People with religious extremist parents. What was it like growing up? Had an exorcism in the living room once, also didn't get all of my vaccines, and now I don't know what I'm at risk for since those tests to see what vaccines you've had are so expensive. Oh, making friends was awkward in grade school because I couldn't watch the shows and listen to the music they did. Some of my earliest memories are driving with my whole family in the Suburban and my dad telling us all the great Christian persecution was going to begin soon, and we all needed to be prepared for them to take us away from him and my mom and how terrible it would be. He got very into Y2K prepping as well, and I remember calling my friends and telling them to believe in Jesus because the world was going to end and we needed to all be ready. I also remembered being confused as to why I didn't have any good friends. Middle school was pretty rough for me. I moved 1,000 kilometers to get away from them. It was terrible. I remember getting into an argument when I was 15 with my parents about how crappy my life was. I had no time for friends because I'd wake up, go to school, come home, do dishes, then homework, then chop wood for 2 hours, clean the floors, maintain the fire in the wood stove, etc. It was like minus 30 degrees Celsius, and I'd have to basically take care of my parents, make them coffees and teas, make them food, keep the fire warm for them. It was the only means of heating that we had. Neither one worked. They just sat there for 16 hours a day on their computers, smoking 5 packs a day between them, staining the entire inside of the house yellowish brown. I used to get bullied in school for smelling like smoke. Anyways, they were bragging about their conservative parenting skills, being superior, etc. I just said something to my dad along the lines of, "Get off your high horse." One of the few times I ever talked back. He just shoved me as hard as he could and stormed out yelling and swearing. Used to get beat and yelled at all the time, so that was nothing, to be honest. It was awful. I burnt my hands and arms occasionally in the wood stove stoking the fire, and my mom used to say things like, "If you think that's painful, just imagine the torture that's ahead of you if you don't respect your parents." She literally said this to me too: "God will make it so that I'll forget that you ever existed when you go to hell and I go to heaven because God takes good care of mothers." I am not exaggerating. This actually happened. Pretty sure I've said this before, at least in so many words, and I'll say it again. Fanaticism in anything is only going to lead you down a dark and horrible path that will surely lead to people absolutely hating you. And if they don't, it's probably because they're just as indoctrinated as you. I'd hear my mom constantly complaining about how I am not religious and a shame to the family. Occasionally, there was even a comment about how me not being religious is the reason of my parents' health being bad. When I was young, my mom was cautious with who I was friends with. People practicing other religions were a strict no-no. I have a friend since college, and my mom constantly worries that I'm going to convert. I was always under my parents' watch. They were helicopter parents so that I couldn't do anything against our religion. I was always the weird kid because my clothing had to be appropriate, and anyone that wasn't our religion, I had to try to convince them to come to our church, or what was the point of being friends with them. Women weren't equal, and we were told that everything we were doing was practicing to be a good wife and mother someday, and that it was our true calling and nothing else mattered. If we planned to go to college, that was great because it could help us teach our children. Sundays were for church only, or church-related activities. No TV, no playing outside, etc. We were just normal enough that we thought we were normal until we grew up and realized that we didn't have any self-esteem or value in ourselves without the church giving us our worth and value. I'm still trying to detox and to find ways to raise my kids because I know I don't want to raise them like I was, but I also don't know the right way to raise them any other way, and I fall into the pattern of being like my parents. Not my parents so much as my grandparents, but my parents carried on the traditions for most of my life. No shows or movies with talking animals, encourages friendships with demons. Women wear ankle-length skirts and dresses, don't cut their hair, keep their hair in a tight, modest bun for church, or any time they wear it up. Purity promises and rings at the start of puberty. Women do not work outside of the home unless absolutely necessary. When my brother got outed as gay, my grandmother nearly tried to exorcise the devil out of him. Church was cult-like, youth groups was a brainwashing session. I've been made to read the Bible multiple times over as my homework instead of real schooling. I'm an atheist now, undoubtedly because of how religion was forced down my throat past my tears growing up. I've had to learn not to hate every religion or religious person I come across. My years at church broke my sense of self-worth and my moral compass until very recently. For me, it was only my mom who was religious, Jehovah's Witness. She converted a few years after my parents had me, so my dad had no idea how bad it was going to be. No holidays or friends for me growing up. I remember freshman year of high school. I wanted to hang out with some kids after school. My mom was not having it and drove around town to find me. It was humiliating, and she openly disapproved them because of how they dressed. She didn't want me hanging out with the wrong crowd because it would stray me further from God. After that, I just stopped bothering trying to make friends last outside of school. My childhood memories were mainly hearing my parents arguing and threatening divorce because my dad was unhappy and hated that our family couldn't do most things like birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, etc. I'm pretty sure their love life was depressing too because lovemaking was only to procreate and it had to be missionary. She openly hates homosexuals and is very judgmental. She has exploded on me and given me silent treatments due to my choice of hair color and fashion. My dad also lost a lot of friends just like me. I'm 26 now and they're still together, but I know they're struggling like they did when I was 5. When I was a kid, my best friend in the entire world actually was a Jehovah's Witness, and I didn't really understand it by any means, but they weren't that bad or anything. Like, they were pretty normal. They just went to church and stuff and didn't do Christmas and stuff like that. I remember their family being a little dysfunctional, but so was mine, and that didn't really matter to me because, like I said, we were just best friends. Grew up hardcore Mormon. I'd like to stress that my childhood isn't as common for other Mormon kids. Most of the time, Mormons are fairly understanding and loving to their kids, but the Mormon culture does promote the mentality my parents had. When I was growing up, I wasn't punished like some others here. I was spanked and experienced the belt, but that isn't why I have some psychological problems now. The real punishment was shame. From the earliest age I can remember, around 6, I was told that I was lazy and wasting my life away. When I first heard the word SX around 11, I looked it up on the family computer. I was a pervert from then on, and had to talk to the bishop every month for a checkup. Hell, in every school I went to, my parents told school counselors that I wasn't allowed on computers because I might look up pictures of naked women. I never did this. This is just the SparkNotes version, but I internalized the shame. Being so young, I just accepted that I was what my father called me and hated myself for it. I was a lazy failure at 6. I was a pervert at 11. It didn't stop me from doing any of the things I was doing before. I just learned to fear my father's footsteps as if it was the devil himself walking down the hallway. I lived my life in the brief intervals between punishment. I am still not beyond this at 24 years old. I later found out that the reason my father lashed out at me and called me these names was because he was fighting his own battles on these issues. He watched smut and hated himself for it. He lost his job. Not his fault. 2008 was hard for everyone. 2020 is no better. And felt inadequate. He was directing his own self-hatred at me. Now, both of us hate ourselves, and digging our way out seems impossible. From my mother's side, things were smooth. However, my father was using religion to abuse me. As a Muslim, we used to memorize the Quran. For me, I wasn't good at memorizing, so I spent 12 years, 3 hours a day trying. After all, I stopped trying and he kept shaming me for not completing it. During the 12 years, he was always comparing me with other kids, friends and cousins, which made me hate them as well. He would also use religion to abuse my mother, face covers and gloves and other crap. Not only that, he listens to music whenever he wants, but when he sees us listening to it, he starts yelling and shaming us. Extremists consider music as taboo. Life was hard for me when I'm close to him, so I moved away. I wouldn't call them extremists, but Pokemon, Harry Potter, MTG, and a lot of other stuff was banned. Pokemon because it promoted evolution over creationism, other stuff because of magic and demonic imagery, the list goes on. I missed out on a lot of cool stuff growing up. Then both my uncles came out as gay, and the whole religious bullcrap stopped soon after. Parents and I get along fine now, but I'm still kind of salty about some stuff. They confiscated my entire secret stash of MTG cards when they found them. I'm super atheist now, by the way. How insecure do you have to be with your ideology and just way of life if you feel like, I don't know, Pikachu could flush years of indoctrination down the toilet because your child plays Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or some crap? It's just so stupid. Same for religions that ban music. It's just pathetic at a certain point. My parents are still Muslim and I am still not an adult, so I am still in the process of having to live with them. You would guess that my father would be a little more open to the world after seeing his half-brother being happily married to a man. No, exactly the opposite. You are not allowed to be like him. He is going to the bad place. He is tainting the family's reputation. That is point one, forcing their child to be someone that they simply aren't. They want to force me and my brother to go back to Turkey. I do not want that at all. I was born and raised and I have lived in Germany for my whole life. Turkey is also really anti-LGBTQ+, something that would really endanger me. Having parents that think that mental illness in general do not exist and are results of demons entering the body to torment your soul is not a great thing. I am pretty sure that I have anxiety, depression, and maybe something more that I am not comfortable with sharing, but guess what? There is no such thing as anxiety or depression. You simply do not wish to follow my guidance. And they send me to the mosque to learn and read our Quran and to chase the demons away. I need a therapist since I was maybe 6 years old, but nobody listens. I am feeling like they are trying to take my identity away. I am someone who isn't comfortable with their body at all. I don't mean weight, I mean the gender they assign me at birth. But I know that I will never get the chance to live as who I am. Even my friends do not accept my wishes and still use the wrong pronouns and name. Guess I'll never get the chance to choose who I want to be and who I want to love. Like seriously, they picked who they want to marry themselves, but when I asked if I can choose my husband, I get a no? I am someone who would gladly cut them out from my life, but sadly I know what would happen. They would try more things to get me to stay, or would never leave me alone. My family thought my dad was murdered in Ecuador on a mission trip and that it was my fault. He was on a mission trip and would call us daily from the phone in town about a mile walk from where he stayed. We didn't get a call for 2 days and then got a voicemail from a hospital in Ecuador that was in Spanish and had bad reception. Around this time, I snuck a copy of Diablo home from a friend's house to install on my computer against my mother's commands. She was very religious and warned me about the evils of bringing sinful things into our home. Always said that doing so would invite devils into our home and our lives. Long story short, I lived in complete agony and regret for a week thinking I murdered my father, just to get a call from him when he landed in Texas saying they lost power to phones in town and he wasn't able to call home. This is just one of the many times I was messed up over our religious upbringing. My parents were pretty cool when it came to religion and raising me and my sister growing up. They were both Christians and I was taught all the stories and such, but we weren't churchgoers. It was exposure to my aunt and uncle and their family that really gave me a taste of religious fundamentalism. I moved from a heavily Catholic, though my immediate family weren't Catholic, small Texas town to Middle Tennessee where I turned 10. Not only did I really get my first taste of religious fundamentalism moving into the Bible Belt, but particularly the hardcore Baptist sect of it, the largest being the aforementioned aunt and uncle. Our families got along, but they would always pressure us into going to church with them, make buttholish comments about our parents raising us for hell and that we turn out to be bums and women of the night. Over the course of 13 years of living in Tennessee, I moved back to Texas a decade ago. Our families had more than one falling out. I'm grateful that I didn't live directly under the thumb of it, but between them and the overabundance of fundamentalism in rural Tennessee really turned me off religion entirely, and is a large reason of why I am so proud to be an atheist today. So congratulations to said aunt and uncle, you failed spectacularly. I was raised Mormon and I happen to also be gay. My father is nothing short of devout, very, very religious. I ended up feeling alone most of my teenage years, and at the time thought I would disappoint my parents so strongly I thought I would never survive the stress. So there's a lot of pressure to feel the spirit even at a young age. But there's a lot more age-based ceremonies, so you get a lot of attention specifically on yourself at a young age. 8. Baptism. My parents also gave me Mumi, First Bible/Book of Mormon. 12. Become a deacon, passing sacrament. 14. Become a teacher, preparing sacrament. 16. Becoming a priest, blessing sacrament. 18. Gaining the priesthood, the right to most of the authority and capabilities in the church. 19. Going on a mission. Anyway, I never felt anything, and once I started having gay urges, I freaked and repressed those emotions deep down. By the time I was 16, my faith was faltering, as so many of the teachings made no sense to me. I stopped going to the church, never got the priesthood, never went on mission, and my parents kept saying, it's just a phase. At 25, after another failed female relationship, she was incredible, I just had zero attraction to her. I finally came to terms with being gay. I had no idea how I would ever find the courage to tell them. I was so afraid they would shut me out and I would lose them forever, especially my dad. Despite his strong religious background, he was always a very loving father. I love his company. When I was 27, I told my parents I actually had a boyfriend for a year and it was going well. My mom basically started becoming hysterical. My father, stone silent. My mom spouting facts about HIV. My dad's look of confusion and controlled poise was unnerving. It was a bumpy next couple of years for both of them, but my mom came around sooner. My dad took forever. I reminded myself it took me 13 years since puberty to accept this. I can give them time too. He started coming around since I got in a new relationship with my partner. My current partner of 4 years is incredible. He melts the stone hearts of both my parents. He's kind, anticipates the needs of everyone around him, and a joy to be around. My parents see how happy he makes me. My mom asked me recently, when are we getting married? My father hugs my partner with genuine love and appreciation. Being raised religious was very stressful. I felt alone for a long period in my life. Now I am living what I thought was not achievable. I opened up to my parents. They accept me for who I am. I accept them, and we're all happier than I ever could have hoped for. Sometimes you really need a story like this one just to lighten the mood a little bit, because I'm actually really happy for this dude. Was deathly terrified of who I was. I'm bi. My dad literally told me he would disown us if he found out we were gay. The funny thing is, we ended up disowning him. He was doing illegal substances behind our backs, and now he can't see his grandkids. Grew up with heavily religious parents, but my mom was way more immersed within it than the rest of my family. Christian. She wasn't as strict with me compared to my other siblings, but she basically forced the idea of church on all of us, and kinda drilled it into our head that participating in worldly events will send you to hell. Sex before marriage? Hell. LGBTQ+ friends? Hell. Self-deletion? Hell. You get the gist of it. I felt guilty for feeling and thinking a lot of things I considered to be bad and would try to make up for it by praying. She was also the primary source for my horrid self-image issues. I was pretty overweight as a kid, and my mom has always been overweight, so hearing things like, you don't need to be eating that extra cookie, or you're way too big, or I definitely need to get you a trainer so you can be skinny like your friends, definitely crushed me on the inside. I did end up losing a lot of weight and evened out, so she never really comments on my body anymore. The whole deliverance plus tongues thing was scary to me as a child, and I never fully understood it. I tried so hard to feel the presence of God within me, but I never understood what everyone else was talking about. I never talked to God, and eventually I started questioning things when I was around 12 to 13. Anyways, fast forward to when I was around 15, I had realized how crappy organized religion was, and how inauthentic and hypocritical fanatical everyone is. I told my mom that I don't believe in God, and she pulled the, but God provided everything for you, the house we live in, the cars we drive, etc., etc. Like, no. I'm pretty sure you working your butt off day in and day out did that. A lot of times she also likes to go on the whole, if you don't follow in God's path, you'll just be a vehement sinner who will go to hell spiel. It's tiring and repetitive. She's still a Jesus freak, and I still don't agree with the church whatsoever, but most of the time I just go so she won't moan at me or threaten to take my car keys away, or some absurd thing like that. Nowadays, though, I have no interest in being part of the church or religion whatsoever, but every Sunday morning we go, I always have a toke session beforehand, LOL. I remember crying myself to sleep some nights because my friends celebrated Christmas, so I thought that meant they couldn't get into heaven. That is like really, really sad. Like the thought of every year that comes around, everyone's like excited for Christmas, and then this one kid is just like so upset that his friends aren't going to go to heaven with him. That's really sad. I lack sentiment in any form, and I'm almost entirely incapable of love. If somebody hurts me, I automatically sever our relationship in my head, and it's like I never knew them. I grew up incredibly vulnerable to conspiracy theories because facts didn't matter. I grew up with no sense of empathy because the church told me what and how to feel about all things. I grew up with no self-confidence because I was expected to be perfect and could not be. I grew up with extreme self-loathing because if I wasn't happy, it's because I wasn't close enough to God. Depression was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. Illness was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. If I have financial pain, it's because I'm not close enough to God. Now that I'm almost 30, I've left that cesspool of lies and I'm learning how to be a human who feels empathy, sees facts, and is capable of love. It's frickin' hard. I'm gonna try and find one that isn't so sad. 1. Very religious parents. We have to abstain from eating onions, meat, and garlic for 9 days twice a year. 2. My parents always think that their religion is the best. They sometimes criticize other religions. 3. They think homosexuality is a sin. 4. My mother wants me to stop eating non-vegetarian food after I get married. 5. I'm only allowed to eat non-vegetarian on Sunday, Friday, and Saturday. 6. My mother frowns when I tell her that I don't believe in God. Yes, I'm Hindu. Yes, it doesn't sound so extreme, but I want to be a chef, so it does sound extreme from my point of view. No, I'm not going to get the hell out of this place because I still love my parents. My mother and father work very hard to ensure I get a proper education and food. Okay, maybe a little oppressive in some regards, but not that bad, not that bad. I honestly think that's the best tone we're gonna end on.
Teenage Redditors, what's the worst part of being a teenager these days? The pressure of being expected to go to a good college as you anxiously hear about student debt getting higher and higher. You kind of think it would be cool, but you're scared out of your mind of the prospect of being in debt for so many years after you graduate. At the same time as everyone's assuring you that if you don't go to college, you're a loser idiot who will work at McDonald's forever. Also, the idiotic technology stigma from older generations. I was reading a book on a Kindle for English in my French class, and she not only took it away from me, but yelled at me for texting during class. I tried to tell her that the thing was literally a slightly more advanced book, but she refused to believe me. On the same note, how online friends are considered not real because they're totally computer programs and not people on the other side of the monitor. My parents always tease me about not having many friends. When I do ask to go over to someone's house or vice versa, they say no. They want me to make friends without being with friends. Also, very high expectations suck. High expectations comes from every parent across every generation, I can promise you that. Having everyone ask what you want to do with your life. I don't even know what I want for breakfast. Everything is taken 20 times more serious. I got a 10-day suspension for a freaking box cutter in my car for work. I'm a straight A student with perfect behavior. My dad points out in front of the whole school board that in the 70s he had a shotgun in his car for hunting while he was at school. Yeah, times have changed. I would think a box cutter is being a little overly cautious though. Being treated like a child and then expecting us to act like adults and take on adult responsibilities the moment we turn 18. Again, generally applies to every generation. College educations cost more and mean less. Getting a degree is basically expected of us, and the great jobs that you're promised aren't always there when you're done. Storekeepers looking at you like you're about to steal something. Yeah, I remember those days. I'm expected to transition from my youth to an adult instantly. I need to have my career planned out, my college picked, and a job on the side while I still suck at doing many things like tying my shoe. I suck at it, I don't know why. It's so much pressure and I don't feel I have the maturity needed yet, but I need to fake it to make it. I'm gonna give you a pro tip here, buddy. Everyone's faking it. Nobody knows what they're doing. There are no real adults as you know them as kids. We're all just winging it. Everyone expects you to do something great. I feel so pressured sometimes. I once had a teacher tell me, "Oh, that's not a grade I expect to see from you. You need to do your best," even when I had honestly done my best. I just turned 20 and for a while I was really sad about it because I felt like I wasn't done being a teenager. This thread has confirmed for me that turning 20 really isn't that bad. It's just that most of my teenage life involved being too sick to really do much. A lot of time was also spent being ruled by depression and anxiety. The good parts of my teens were so good that it made me wonder how my teenage years could have gone if all the crappy stuff hadn't happened and I'd just been normal. But in the last week or so, I've definitely learned that being 20 is infinitely cooler than being 16, and that while my teenage circumstances weren't normal in the slightest, it is normal to have a crappy time being a teen. Parents. I have a tracker on my phone, and my parents flip and scream at me whenever I turn it off. Oh, and the sudden gravity of the world in my situation here. Yeah, I'm sure it's hard with parents having access to the technology that they do now. At the end of the day though, I will say 99% of parents are just trying to make sure that you're safe. School food is at an all-time low. To be fair, how would you know? We get put down by our elders for being wrong in some way because of the time frame in which we were born. So what if we don't have to walk 5 miles uphill every day to get to school? That doesn't mean I'm any less a contributing member of society than you are. To be fair, you're still in school, so not technically contributing to society yet, but I'm sure you'll do fine when you get there. How much stricter the laws become, and how easy it is to get into a lot of trouble. I hear all these stories from my dad and his friends, my uncles, friends' dads, and older cousins about all the things they did, and how sometimes they would get caught by the cops doing regular, stupid teenage stuff. Speeding, racing, drinking underage, paintballing in the streets, getting into fistfights, or getting caught with a little bit of pot. From what they told me, the cops seem a lot more relaxed, and let them off with warnings because they understood that teens do stupid things and try drugs and alcohol. I hear all of these situations and think if I ever did any of this and got caught, I would very likely get in a lot of trouble and possibly put in jail. It seems like no one remembers that the time to screw up and learn from stupid mistakes is when you're a teenager. As for high school, if I did half the things I hear they used to do in high school, I would be in jail. I will say, yes, cops handle things very differently nowadays, and I think a lot of that would come down to better training. They find a kid drinking underage and literally want to ruin their life. They seem to forget that they're here to help and protect society, not screw them over and make a quota. Way too much focus on grades rather than learning. This also causes way too much stress in school that is unhealthy and can create a terrible connection between the student and the joy of learning. Also, the college process. Screw the college process. I would argue now that learning is a lot more lenient and that there's a lot of different types of learning available to you now. Back in the day, if you didn't follow the specific curriculum that was assigned to you or you weren't able to keep up with it, too bad. Aspiring to be great or do something meaningful with your life, then realizing the system and society you were raised in will be the first thing to beat you and your ambitions down. Oh, this kid's already figured it out. Being expected to work for free to get experience, especially knowing not too long ago on-the-job training was paid and covered what college and internships do now. We've all seen the memes. Employers want 30 years of experience but no older than 20 and they're only going to pay you 3 cents above minimum wage. The fact that we don't believe in our own generation. The fact that the generation preceding us doesn't believe in us, even though they complained when the generation preceding them did the same. No matter how great we are, what great things we do, we're classified as a lazy generation that isn't as good as those before us. But if this question was asked 5, 15, or 50 years ago, the answer would be the same. It's a multi-generational, unavoidable, self-deprecating cycle of stereotypes that are in place to help legitimize the elder generation after they felt scorned when they were teens. And instead of fighting it as a group, we agree and blame each other. Okay, here's what I'll say on this one. If they're complaining that you have it easier than they did, that means that the previous generation did accomplish something, and you're gonna make life a little bit easier for the generation after. That's kinda how it goes. If you're gonna choose not to acknowledge that, okay, go live in a cave and rub some sticks together until you make fire. I'll leave you in the woods with a hand axe and we'll see how long it takes before you can send me a text. Parents tell me I'm not educated enough on social issues and I'm not making up my own mind. I get educated on social issues and make up my mind on those issues, but I don't share my parents' opinions on things. Suddenly, my perspective on these issues doesn't matter because I'm too young and I lack real-world experience. Give me a break. Sounds like your parents wanted you to make your own decisions and aren't happy that you didn't make the same ones they did. The worst part is honestly homework. I would rather go to school for longer and have less breaks if we don't get any homework, because it just ends up being longer work than if we just added 2 more hours of school, and tons of stress. Also, an issue with this is that teachers don't necessarily communicate how much homework they're giving to the kids, and thus can end up giving them a lot more than intended when all of them start piling up. For me, it's the stereotypes about us. Not all of us are pot-smoking, weed sock-wearing, sex-crazed, uneducated, and disrespectful jerks. We're considered a terrible generation, when really we're probably no more rebellious or terrible than our parents were at that age. I gotta agree with you on this one, but let me tell you again, everyone who was ever a teenager went through this. Other kids my age that think they're better than us because they listen to classic rock. This is always going to be a thing. People are going to tell you that their music's better than yours. Doesn't matter when it came from or who it is. Everyone has their opinions and they think they're cool because of it. For me, it's peer pressure. I'm sure it was the same years ago, but I recently moved from Massachusetts to California, and it was my first time ever being legitimately exposed to anything like weed or alcohol. I spend time with the people who are all about partying and hooking up and stuff, and I don't like that stuff, but I like the people. So my best friend comes up to me with questions like, "So have you hooked up with anyone yet?" And I'm like, "No." And he instantly goes around to every girl he knows I'm into or finds somewhat attractive and asks them to hook up with me. And I know he means well, but it just makes me feel really weird because I was brought up being told never to touch drugs or alcohol and not to date until college and stuff like that. Just me, of course. It could be different for others. Also, you're constantly pressured to excel at something, and I don't. I'm just not amazing at anything. I'm average in every way. Let me tell you, buddy, 99.999999% of people are average. Don't feel like that's a mark against you. Being written off as a teenager regardless of your mental capacity or maturity. By that logic, one could write off humanity as a whole. Participation awards are dumbing everyone down. My peers are too entitled. Everyone's treated like a perfect star when they're younger because parents think their kids can't handle not being perfect, when it's really just the parents who want to see their kids be the best. Everyone grows up thinking they're special, and then either won't accept that they aren't when they're older, or has a hard time coming to terms with it. We're taught that we're all winners, but that takes away the joy of actually accomplishing or being good at anything. The peer pressure is overwhelming. The pressure to lose your virginity, smoke, drink, and do drugs. I'm almost 19, and I'm the last virgin among my friends. They're not really pressuring me to lose my virginity, but it just sucks to feel left out of the loop. It sounds like most of this pressure is coming from yourself. Don't worry, everyone takes life at their own pace. Being written off as a hormonal teenager really sucks. Parents don't believe that I'm depressed. They think I've been in a bad mood for these past few years. I'm pretty sure that harmful thoughts alone would merit a trip to a therapist's office. Not to mention the daily struggle of getting out of bed, going to school, hiding my wrists, pretending to be normal. I'm a teenager, so I'm just lazy or moody. One of my friends recently announced she's pregnant. She's 14. People say our generation is childish. I disagree. Our generation is growing up too fast. It's terrifying. I've yet to have my first kiss, drive a car, drink alcohol, have a child. All of these things that are now being achieved by kids 3 years younger than me. It's just not right. Knowing how badly the generations before us screwed the environment up is a really scary thought. The type of stuff other teenagers are into. No, Greg, I don't want to get drunk at 10 a.m. For me, it's just the transition. I just want to get settled, out of college, secure job, marriage. I'm 19 and currently enrolled in my 3rd different college. Granted, not everyone chooses to transition that much, but it is frustrating. Being told that everything that is discussed in school is absolutely necessary later in life. Screw that. I'd like trade schools, where we learn what we need to learn, and not everything the human race has discovered since the beginning of our existence. I'll say at the age of 32, I've never had to solve for the area under a curve. That if I want to be part of the popular group at my school, I need to be rich, smoke a lot, and drink a lot. Pro tip, there's no such thing as a popular group unless you make one out to be. They're just a group of people who enjoy each other's company, like you enjoy your friends' company. They have similar interests like you and your friends do. They aren't special. Why look up to them? Mood swings. What's that? You're in a great mood? Well, I'm gonna kick your heart in the balls for no apparent reason. Have fun overanalyzing every tiny aspect of yourself. Again, this is something that might never go away. Your entire life is online friends and relationships. You're a nerd or loser or whatever at age 14. People can track that back at age 24. It's ridiculous and kind of sad. People spend way too much time worrying about making their social media personas so big that they lose sight of the relationships in front of them. You never really know someone. This is one thing I will say is social media was nowhere near as big a thing when I was in high school as it is now. I can only imagine the added crap that goes along with that. I'm a virgin by choice. Most of my other friends have had quite a bit of sex. I get crap because I want to wait to lose my virginity with someone I've been dating for at least a couple of years, because I want it to mean something. My friends had a competition over spring break to see who could screw the most girls in a week, and they don't understand why I don't want to be like them. Education is incredibly expensive, and yet we're lazy or whatever for not attending college. A lot of kids in my graduating class don't give a crap anymore because they know they can't afford the higher education they want. All a lot of us care about at this point is graduating. We aren't given many options. Personally, learning to be a man without my father being there to guide me and teach me how. He passed away when I was 13. Aside from that, it's the overall standards that I'm being held up to. I'm the youngest child in my family, and my brother and sister both graduated high school with honors and are off pursuing great things. Then there's me. I'm just different from them. A freshman in high school who lives with a mom that just doesn't get that I see things and do things differently. Their knowledge is in books, and mine is in the sheets of music. I hate feeling like that makes me useless. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. The standards are what's hurting a lot of teens. The fact that teenagers exist as some sort of pseudo-protected class and are hardly expected to be able to wipe their own butts, let alone make intelligent life decisions. There's a systematic lack of responsibility held by teenagers in our society such that any driven, motivated individual is aberrant. For the entirety of human history, people past the age of 14 or 15 were treated as responsible adults, but nowadays, many are coddled well into their 20s. I think it leaves people unable to ultimately become responsible members of society, and it's managed to create a positive feedback loop. Society doesn't give teenagers responsibility, so they become irresponsible, making society view them as unable to hold responsibility, and to withdraw even more. The expectations placed upon the average teenager typically involves not getting wasted or high on school nights and avoiding trouble with the police. Good grades are nice too, but maybe you can't manage to do your homework because you're meant for better things. This, instead of a system that existed even until the early 20th century. Make your way in the world or get left behind. I don't advocate a return to this system, but I do believe that more responsibility needs to be placed on young adults in order to foster their development into effective members of society. This is true. If you want them to be able to take responsibility, you need to trust them with some. The fact that it takes a bachelor's degree to babysit ticks me off. I'm trying to find a summer job and I can't get anything because I have no experience. But how do I get experience if I can't start anywhere? The fact that I'm 19 and get put in a group with 14 and 15-year-olds. Also, my senior year of high school, I had to ask to go to the bathroom. Now in college, no one gives a crap, and I'm solely responsible for myself. How does high school prepare me for college again? School is basically pointless, and going to college doesn't guarantee you the ultimate high-paying 9-to-5 anymore. Just because I know people will be like, your education is important, school is very good. Shut up. Learning is what's important, and that doesn't go on a whole lot in school anymore. And I know this gets said a lot by kids that slack in school to excuse themselves for being lazy and stupid, but I'm an AB student and I agree that a grade doesn't define anyone's intelligence. Yet, grades are all that's supposed to matter to kids these days. It's really pretty stupid, especially considering how little most college degrees do for us nowadays. The people suck. My bio teacher would put my classmates and myself down every day. People would report her all the time, and nothing happened. Finally, one day, I was like, I'm done. I'm making it stop. I recorded her on my phone, which is apparently called unlawful wiretap, yet I was in a public setting. Anyway, I caught so much stuff that she even downright refused to teach us anymore. Yeah, some kids in the class didn't always pay attention, but what she did was way overboard. She got suspended until we left her class. She took me to court. Since I didn't have a malicious intent, I get to go on a lovely program called diversion. I have to basically be on probation until November, and I have to do 30 hours of community service. All because I recorded my teacher to show the administration. I've never been in any sort of trouble. The school cop even got a good word out about me. I actually tried to be decent to this teacher, even though I hated her, and now she's talking crap about me. So much so that someone from my mom's job said that she called us degenerates. Just childish. And she's supposed to be the adult. One day, I got a large door jammed between my toes and punched a kid in the face, and he let it go. In that situation, I was definitely in the wrong and got nothing. The one where I feel I did the right thing, I got punished. I just hate people. This is just unfortunate to hear, honestly. It's the administration that should be doing something about the teacher that's causing problems. And you shouldn't get in trouble for doing what was necessary to prove to them that this was going on when they weren't doing their jobs properly to begin with. I hate the stereotyping of teenagers. People think all teenagers are obsessed with is swag and Instagram. Me and a lot of other teenagers are not like that. I also don't like when adults think my points are invalid because I'm 14. There are absolutely 14-year-olds with more common sense than people in their 30s, and sometimes you need to acknowledge that. The amount of general expectations of you, at least in the US, everyone who wants to succeed has to play 3 sports, play a musical instrument, get a 4.0 GPA, do way too many hours of community service, and still get 10 hours of sleep a night. I call bull on that. How being smart is frowned upon by other teenagers. Seriously, how often do you see reading or actually being intelligent as something a cool person does? No, they're always smoking and partying and drinking at age 15, and stupid things like that. In a few years, you're gonna come to learn that the word cool doesn't mean what you think it means.
What's one thing from the 1990s that will never be popular again? Being in front of the TV with friends and family at a certain time to watch a certain show, and if you missed it, you missed it. Free AOL Frisbees in the mail. Here's $20. I'll pick you up at 8 when the mall closes. Don't talk to strangers. Payphones. Really hoping parachute pants come back. Personally, I've got a soft spot for Jinko jeans. Pogs, even if Alf comes back for it.
Hey, Bart, you know Alf? He's back in Pog form.
The golden age of shareware, the idea of actually owning the software you buy and decent file sharing through Napster before companies inundated LimeWire and the like with virus-infected decoy seeds. Get off the internet! I need to use the phone! Yo, MTV Raps.
Palm Pilots.
What the figgity-uck is a Palm Pilot? Oh, a PDA. I'd see them around a lot, and I remember wanting one real badly, but I wouldn't know what it was for, and why the hell would I even have one, because I was a feral ADHD goblin child. Phone booths. Rewatching The Matrix is a constant reminder of this. The film still holds up incredibly well, but the technology doesn't so much unless you can suspend your belief for the time period. See, when I was a kid, I thought The Matrix was cool. I especially thought that Matrix 2 Reloaded was cool, but now I'm older, I don't really like the films anymore. Purchased cell phone ringtones. You have received a collect call from, "Hey mom, I'm fine and going to a friend's house." Burning CDs for every occasion and writing said occasion on CD with Sharpie. Honestly, I think that's a nice, charming way of just cataloging memories and important moments in your life that are connected to a song. Y2K hype. There were a ton of futuristic shows and movies about the net. Let's just say it turned out differently and less cool than portrayed. Not really a 90s show or anything, or even franchise, but Mega Man Battle Network I always thought had like a pretty cool impression of the internet. Like with the net navies and everything. Tamagotchi, hope for the future. I don't see Discmans making a comeback or those white seashell and coral necklace things everyone had, boys and girls both. Surprisingly, rollerblading seems to be making a bit of a comeback though. I see them at skate parks now quite often. They actually rip too, grinding flat bars and stuff. Remember free refills at coffee shops and ashtrays on every table? Affordable housing, hope, progress, an idea of a better and happy future for all mankind. Jinko jeans. Not having a cell phone or anyone expecting you to have a phone on you at all times. VHS tapes and DVDs. Oh, we'll see who has the last laugh when the world goes to pot, the internet goes down, rendering the streaming services useless, and then I'm there with my Malcolm in the Middle all seasons DVD box set, my bicycle hooked up to a generator so I can power my TV and DVD player. We'll see who has the last laugh. But for real, DVDs are super cool. Physical media is king, and sometimes they come with really cool bonuses like behind-the-scenes information and whatnot, which can be really fun to look into. First-run syndication TV shows. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were really only three major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, with PBS and Fox having just launched. But Fox was still a very new thing that struggled to fill airtime. There were a lot of independent TV stations, though, that aired mostly reruns, old movies, game shows, etc. Then, Star Trek The Next Generation premiered in '87 as a first-run syndication show, meaning it aired on whatever local network wanted to pay for the rights on any day at any time. It was a huge success, and suddenly there was a ton of action-adventure shows going to first-run syndication. Those local stations that had nothing to show on certain nights loved it. Baywatch was directly syndicated and was one of the most watched TV shows in the world for one point. Then there was Xena, Hercules, ST, DS9, Babylon 5, Relic Hunter, Viper, and just a ton of other light-hearted action-adventure TV that doesn't really exist anymore. As a 90s kid, it was great. When UPN and the WB formed, a lot of those independent stations didn't need to fill airtime anymore. By 2000, the market had shrunk, and today with streaming, it's gone for good. Those t-shirts that reacted to heat and changed color? It turns out that bright purple armpits never became acceptable. I think the brand was Global Hypercolor. One of those inventions. Just because you can make it doesn't mean you should. I don't know, those shirts sound kinda cool actually, just on the concept alone. The creation of a major television network, or the attempt to do so. After Fox succeeded in the mid-80s to create the Big Four, and remember that PBS counts as a major as well, you saw attempts like the WB, UPN, and their merger in the CW. With streaming services, weblets, and specialized networks that only deal with a single topic, like the Weather Channel and ESPN, proliferating the airwaves, there's never going to be an appetite for another major network, or the rationale present to develop the funding necessary to create and sustain it until it becomes self-supporting. Not in the reality we're all currently living in. To do so, you have to have several things: a national news division, a dedicated sports division, a production division capable of turning out massive amounts of sustainable content, and it has to be scripted as well as non-scripted content, or reality television as it's called. A schedule that covers the entire week for at least 8 to 12 hours of original content daily, and a national network of television affiliates that broadcast your content. And in the cases of your news division, represent your main network in that affiliate's broadcast area. I remember how difficult it was for Fox back in the 80s, but as a fellow student in radio and television pointed out to me, they have a national news division, a weekly schedule, content, and local affiliates nationwide. Don't let anyone fool you, they are a network. And it's never going to happen again. Okay, being a media student, I find this stuff really interesting. I was not expecting a double feature on things like, about syndication and how Fox established itself as a giant network or whatever, but I don't think I completely agree with the idea that there'll never be a new TV network or something like that, because streaming platforms, from what I can tell, while they are somewhat profitable, they just don't seem like they're as profitable anymore as people like to think, and they're very restrictive business-wise, because the instant that you try to change anything, people are really finicky with it. It's like, oh, I thought I was going to get everything all at once in a week, and now more and more shows are going back to releasing an episode a week or something. Or the fact that all of them are now trying to make more money off of people by restricting how many people can really have an account at once, I wouldn't be surprised if regular old TV made a comeback eventually. Limp Bizkit. They're one of the few bands unable to capitalize on nostalgic fans and have to cancel their last 2 tours for safety concerns and personal health reasons, which methinks is face-saving code for poor ticket sales. I actually rather like Limp Bizkit, and after they've said that, I might see if they're touring through England. Running home from the playground to watch and record your favorite cartoons on the VHS, spending hours at the video store, or reserving your favorite movies in advance. I still remember the 2+1 deal and how happy I was when I got an extra movie. Colored ketchup. Did anyone say Carrot Top yet? Pontiac Sunfire. PlayStation 1. While the PlayStation 1 itself is definitely not going to be making a comeback anytime soon, I do believe that the appeal of low poly graphics, like based on PlayStation 1 graphics, are slowly and gradually becoming more and more popular among people as an aesthetic choice. Smoking in restaurants. Shoulder pads. I could have swore shoulder pads were like a 70s thing. Pet rocks, like the ones that were actually sold. Cereal box prizes that are actually in the box and don't require a sign-up or something. I once got Lion King themed limited edition Pogs from a cereal box, had to save 3 barcodes and mail them in. They were awesome. Otherwise, there was always a gift or toy in the box. I miss those days. Companies don't use promotions like this anymore because they know we'll have to eat anyway. No need to market food anymore or make it appealing or exciting. So sad. Sony Walkman and Discman. Peanut butter and jam in the same jar. For good reason, that sounds awful. Then again, apparently English peanut butter and American peanut butter are two completely different beasts. I don't think movies like the original Blair Witch Project 1999 would have the hype it did. The internet changed a lot of things. That website with its lore, hidden secrets, and that most folks then couldn't go Google to see it was obviously fake. The number of people that believed it was real was insane. That would never happen today. Cheat codes and hidden characters are mostly gone now because of the internet. The secrets to unlock hidden characters in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 were all word of mouth. When playing Tears of the Kingdom, I can literally find out every secret item on launch day. Very different from the original Legend of Zelda, where you had a map of the overworld that came with the game and were told, good luck. And yeah, it is too easy to complete games nowadays with the internet. Even I'm guilty of using the internet when I get really stuck in a game somewhere, though. What I really hate, though, is when games nowadays glitch out so badly that they just stop you from progressing, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? And then you get told, oh, you've just glitched. Other people have had the same problem. Oh, that's a good one, actually. Games being made and shipped as complete products worthy of the price you're paying day one. Having a face and body that hasn't been altered in some way or filtered and edited in photos. I remember when the furthest we would go to deceive people about our appearance was wearing a push-up bra. Yeah, filters are just super lame nowadays, and plus, let's be honest, I think people have trained their eyes now to be able to tell when a filter is being used. Smoking the devil's lettuce from an aluminum can. Furbies. Mofos being sensitive about everything. Play-Doh, Slinkies, boy bands, video rental stores, Will and Jada Smith, Laserdisc, Trapper Keepers, Paul Frank brand. I feel like there only used to be 15 famous people. Nowadays there are 100,000 famous people that you've never heard of. Polaroid nudes from your significant other. Teachers telling students that they can't speak a language other than English in class because I know you're talking about me. Prank calls before caller ID. Talking to your beloved on a landline with your family listening in because the only phone in the house is in your living room and your granny is making pumping motions with her hips whilst the rest of your family is giggling in the background. Screw that. Nah, mate, you just can't take the banter. Not sure if it was popular exactly due to limited release, but OK Cola. It was okay. My college roommate and I used to call the 1800 number repeatedly to hear OK jokes or get free coupons. We loved it. Probably everything I just said will never return. Human decency. There are far too many people going for imaginary internet points these days. Luckily, Eurodance boy bands phenomena like Take That and Backstreet Boys, Unlucky, Grunge, and Nirvana, Movie Phone, Aquanet, payphones, and phone books. When you think about the level of convenience that we have compared to, say, the 80s or even the 90s or 2000s even, it is crazy. Checking the free TV guide from the Sunday paper to find out which of the Cinemax or Showtime was going to have a softcore smut that shows breasts after your parents went to bed. Wait, maybe that was the late 80s.
Blockbuster, Purple Tomato Sauce, Saturday Disney Cartoons, Moon Boots, Pogs, Orbit Soda, Dial-Up Internet, Portable CD Players, WCW, Tamagotchis, and Fanny Packs.
In England, we call them bum bags because 1, fanny pack sounds stupid, and 2, well, it's kind of a gendered word here in England. Lunch tickets. Back then, we will get a yellow and black ticket calendar to get our food, and we had to give them to a ticketer. Green, yellow, and red cards for behavior. This was elementary. If your card was green, you'll get a surprise or some sort of pizza party. If your card was red, you'll get no pizza party, nor prize, and you'll do standards. Yellow was like a warning to get your act together. Spinner rims, like what were people thinking? Real comedy. I feel like you can't push boundaries anymore. Drawing animation. Long, dumb arguments about some trivia where there was no clear answer, so everyone left still believing they were right. When I was in middle school, you couldn't just pull out your smartphone to Google if Marilyn Manson actually removed a set of ribs so he could suck his own mini Manson. Hit shows with 1990s TV production value. There was such a vast difference between TV and movies. Shows like X-Files and NYPD Blue were very much exceptions in terms of production value. Most stuff looked cheap and shoddy. I mean, me personally, I would rather pick classic Magnum P.I. over, say, the more recent CWDC shows, because, God, those look awful now. I remember when my friends were raving about how good Arrow or maybe even The Flash were back in the 20-teens or whatever. But now, God, they have fallen. Those big wooden roundabouts with no seats or handles. Kids actually being kids. I loved running around the small green with my school pals. The whole "I'll be back when the streetlights come on" is a way of knowing what time we had to be home. The fact that social skills were an actual thing. The lack of mind-numbing tech. And Snake. If you're wondering and don't know what he means by Snake, it's basically an old game. I used to be with it. Then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what is it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you. Very, very underrated Simpsons quote in my opinion. Lead paint poisoning. I remember always seeing lawyer commercials about getting compensation. Not pleasant, but popular. Absolute golden age of Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. So many classic cartoons were created at that time. Unfortunately, my eyeballs would not wipe their butts with Cartoon Network at this point. I'm not sure if they mean like Cartoon Network or Adult Swim being at their best anymore, because I don't know, the characters and cartoons of the 90s are still revered to this day. I mean, there was that cartoon recently called Jellystone, I think, which is literally just all of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, save for Scooby-Doo, I think. Living in a town, and I think they gender swapped a bunch of the characters because otherwise it would just be a huge sausage fest. Out of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, I rather like Top Cat and Snagglepuss. Don't know why they're both cats, but I always liked it when Snagglepuss went, "Heavens to Murgatroyd!" Anyone remember the Hanna-Barbera Cartoon Olympics? Having an attention span, like even just watching TV without constantly checking the phone to look up something. Well, you see, buddy, you're talking to the wrong guy here, cause I was born with ADHD. I've never had an attention span. Shell suits, hopefully. Jimmy Savile. For those of you who don't know who Jimmy Savile is, you're probably American or something like that. Basically, he was a BBC presenter who got caught being a kiddie diddler. I say caught, but it was more that everyone knew he was a kiddie diddler, but he had so much influence and power, essentially, as a celebrity, like one of the biggest celebrities in the UK for a time, I think, that basically no one could do anything about it until he died, and then basically everything spilled out about how the BBC colluded with him and stuff like that. It was a whole frickin' thing when it happened. That one phone line that you would call and they would tell you the time. TV shows only having 3 commercials for a break. Then it went to 6. Going to clubs and raves with huge sound systems until 6 a.m., the UK government put laws in place to stop people openly partying all night long. From what I can tell from watching old shows, basically calling people gay as though it's top banter. I would say jelly shoes because of how goddamn uncomfortable they were, but they're back. Pages and everyone having a code so you knew who was paging you. Wearing clothes backwards, it was a whole vibe. I just don't believe you. I don't believe that wearing your clothes backwards was ever a vibe. Flip phones? Well, you say that, and yet the Samsung flip phone came out a couple years ago, and I absolutely love mine. Like, when I finally moved on from my 90s Nokia flip phone to whatever the hell I got in 2013 as my first actual my new phone or whatever, I was just there like, man, I wish this was a flip phone. And then finally, in 2022 or 2021, Samsung answered my prayers, and I frickin' love it. Having a low spending market, everything seems to be increasing by the day. Vanilla Ice. Hip hugger pants with a thong peeking out. Very common in the mid to late 90s. Visiting people in person randomly. Like, people would just drop by, or we'd we'd be out and stop by to see a friend. We were more hospitable, had more free time, and there was no cell phone, so it wasn't like you could call, so expectations were different. You know, when I first read that, I thought it said randomly visiting people in prison. I was like, what? Having to wait till 9 to call your girlfriend so you could get free minutes? Apparently, gaming in person with 2 players. I'm told you need separate consoles now. That actually annoys me nowadays with all of the development that we've made in gaming and technology, in gaming and whatnot. Multiplayer is kind of stagnant, especially local co-op and everything. Like, as someone who is a younger brother and whose brother didn't want to play games with him, or he played single player games all the time, I wanted more games where I could actually play through the entire game with my brother or my friends or whatever. It's just something that I think more games need to concentrate on. Flesh out multiplayer mechanics, for God's sake.
Afraid of the dark on Nickelodeon.
It is impossible to explain to someone who wasn't there how cool the Macarena was the first week. The Jerry Springer Show. Gas was 89 cents a gallon and cigarettes were $9.99 a carton. Inflation's a female dog, honey. Internet cafes with full tables of boxy desktop computers, and you had to pay by the hour to use it sometimes. I used to love this skeezy internet cafe that I used to go to with my friends. We'd play Call of Duty, S4 League, Dawn of War, or mods of Warcraft with One Piece and Bleach characters. And they'd host all-nighters once a week on a Friday, and you'd be there till 6 a.m. playing whatever the hell you want, and they'd give us the keys, and people would make snack runs and everything. Man, those were good times. Animorphs books and the short-lived TV show. I think someone's making a comic that's still going now, actually, of Animorphs. Hamster dance. Really elaborate home theater setups, component stereo systems. In mainstream use, I know there are still niche enthusiasts. Our first house was pre-wired in the family room for surround sound speakers. I would actually love a home theater system. Doing research using encyclopedias and dictionaries. Excessively violent, borderline hentai anime. Oh yeah, they don't make them like they used to. I remember watching the frickin' Guyver on a VHS when I was a kid with my mom and stuff. That was crazy. It was literally the show that told me or showed me that heroes don't always win. Or something like Ninja Scroll, which, God, do not watch Ninja Scroll if you have a weak constitution and are afraid of, some pretty violent and horrible sexual stuff going on. Because I remember when I was 13 years old, my mom's friend was like, oh, he likes anime? I got him an anime DVD. Didn't even bother to look at the fact that it was an 18 plus. Also, please, believe me, I know some of you hate when I do too much commentary on these, but if I weren't doing this, I would literally be saying POG about 1,000 more times.
Late-night TV psychics, Miss Cleo, Sylvia Brown, John Edward, etc. Some of them couldn't even predict their own demise.
Apparently Surge, the gateway soda to a booger sugar habit. Life. Back in the 90s, life was so much better for a lot of reasons. We were much happier than today, and we didn't have technology. We had more privacy than today before social media came by. Things were cheaper than today. My parents used to buy the newspaper for 15 cents back then. Today, it's €1.50 for the daily one. As a kid, I was much happier meeting other kids at school, and we used to play a lot. Something like a shoebox was like winning the lottery. School used to be more exciting than today. I loved coloring books as a child. There weren't any automated phone systems back then, and you used to get on the phone with a company with ease. Everyone used to go outside for services, and we used to meet a lot of people, have a chat, and I used to play with anything. Riding the bus used to cost 15 cents. Today it's €2 before the government made them free. McDonald's used to be like a Disneyland to me. The toys used to be like winning the lottery. Street food like pasties used to cost 8 cents, and I used to eat 2 of them, and they were pretty good. Today you need to spend 60 cents for 1 pasty. TV shows were better than today's. I really loved Power Rangers and Baywatch, and I still love them till this day. MTV used to be about music and not reality shows. It used to be exciting. You didn't need to pay to watch TV back then, and it used to be good. Today, to watch TV, you have to pay only to see garbage being aired on the television. I do think that ever since modern technology emerged and life became faster, it's no longer the life I once knew. Everything is becoming boring nowadays. Inflation is a real female dog. Life was so much better back then. I still miss the 90s. Like, no duh, inflation sucks, and yeah, of course, everyone's gonna miss the times when they were younger and everything, and happier and whatnot because they were a kid. It's nostalgia and whatnot. I think the most probably profound thing that they said was about how the rapid expansion of technology, fast living, and things like people being made redundant from simple jobs like phone lines and everything. I hate it when they put me through to a robot when I want to talk to a person who could fix my very, very specific problem that the robot or whatever, or the automated phone system just doesn't give me the option to do. But I guess I'll stop there because the deeper I get into that topic, the more depressed I'll become. Good night, all!
Reddit, what are some college majors that should definitely be avoided? If you're a journalism major, getting involved in student publications and media is way more important than classes. Journalists aren't hired based off their degree, but how well acclimated they are to newsrooms, deadlines, and things like that. You can't learn the trade in a classroom, only in the field. Classes are just to help you refine your skills and the little things. Standalone language majors. How are you, a student learning a language in less than 4 years, going to compete with a bilingual speaker who also has skills for the workforce? You have to pair it with something else. If you want to major in a language, you double major. I was looking for this one. I cannot tell you how many people major in a language without studying abroad and think they're going to be able to move to that country and work there. I did German and linguistics, double major, and am doing my master's in Germany with the intention of teaching English as a second language. Some of my friends just majored in French or German and planned on moving over here and getting any kind of job. This isn't something I've ever thought about, but makes a lot of sense when you lay it out like that. General studies. Just pick a major. Being undecided all 4 years won't look great on your first resume unless you leave undergrad with some amazing experience that translates into an immediate position. I was a history major. 'Twas fun, but no money. Now I'm a zookeeping major. Tons more fun and even less money. If you don't plan on getting at least a master's degree, avoid psychology. I've known several servers, bartenders, and receptionists that have their degree in psychology, even a few that have ended up in retail. Not that I look down on those jobs, just that they clearly don't require a psychology degree. To get a job in the field, you pretty much need to have a master's at least. Art history. My current roommate, out of college now, was an art history major. She doesn't do any art herself, she just really likes art. Spends a lot of her weekends going to museums and galleries. She can't find a job in what she wants to do. Has an entry-level position as an office administrator, and she hates it. She can't really move up much in her company because she doesn't have the knowledge of the industry she's in. She went to a private university for it, and will be paying off loans for a long time. This is one that before even coming to this thread, I heard was a rough one to try and get a job with. Be careful when studying music. Most universities offer music performance and music education. Getting a bachelor's in music education means you're certified to teach at a school, and therefore has a lot more potential of getting you a job. Music performance just means you got really good at playing your instrument. You'll still have job options such as giving lessons, starting your own studio, joining a professional symphony, or just being a freelance musician. But those all have varying levels of difficulty and instability. For example, to get into a symphony, you have to be the best of the best, at least for top-tier symphonies. So your probability of being hired depends solely on your audition. And to be a freelance musician means that there may be periods where you're unemployed. And even when you are hired by someone, you'll go most of the time without insurance or a retirement fund. And then you have to factor in the location you're in. If you're in an area that's musically dry, you won't be finding any paying gigs unless you're a teacher. There may be plenty of people wanting your services like churches, community bands, and musical pit orchestras, but you probably won't get paid. Yeah, unfortunately, artists and musicians have it rough nowadays, especially based on your area. Non-accredited majors. Even if it sounds like a good degree, mechanical engineering for example, it might not be accredited, meaning it doesn't hold anywhere near the value. I'm only using mechanical engineering as an example. This is normally an issue with university programs that are new, which means that their program normally wouldn't have accreditation. It would be in the application process. It's quite the gamble when you're a new student, because if they don't get accreditation by the time you graduate, you're SOL. Yeah, that would be the last thing you want, is to waste a whole bunch of money on a class that literally means nothing to anyone. Biology. Unless you want to go to med/farm/vet school or graduate school. A BS in biology won't get you very far, and you'll max out an earning potential early on. A lot of bio majors go back for their MS or PhD because they're stuck at low pay scale. If you already know that's what you want to do, you're fine. Make sure you do a BS and not a BA though. Don't do something you dislike because you think it's a good career path. Work is going to be a major part of your life, so aiming for something you can't stand doing is a bad idea. I'm fighting with that sort of. I decided to major in something I love, but I hate it now because it's becoming a career instead of a hobby. The career I want is generally lower pay, but I'd rather major in that because I'd actually be happy. This is the conflict I think a lot of college students go through. There's the thing that you want to do, but you kind of don't want to do it as a job because then you won't want to do it anymore. Versus the thing that you don't want to do, but it pays really well. I don't know. It's a tough decision to make either way. My last job was at a gas station chain, and I met at least 3 hourly gas station managers who had biology master's degrees. Blew my mind that they were attempting to pay down $120,000 worth of loans on $20 an hour. Everyone I know with a bio or biochem master's is employed in research or by private firms. What the heck were your coworkers doing? Criminal justice. It seems to be the new default major for people who don't actually know what they want to do now that psychology is out of vogue. I work at a courthouse and I never graduated college. Most of the new people are trying to get in with criminal justice degrees because it'll look good on their resume, and there are a ton of people applying with that major. Very competitive. Criminal justice sounds like something that would be useful if you're going for something in the law field, but maybe not? I don't know. It's not always just about the major, but what else you do in school. I got my degree in anthropology, which as a bachelor's doesn't mean much in itself. But I managed to get into courses where I did actual research and got my name co-published in a couple professional journals. That was something I've been able to market to employers as much, if not more, than the degree. Same thing goes for something often bad-mouthed, like women's studies. I have 2 close friends who went that route and are both employed in careers. Women's studies, not STEM, prepared them to go on to get social work degrees, which is where they now make their living. Agreed. An in-demand major helps, but doesn't mean jack if you don't put in the work to network and intern. A crappy degree held by someone who did internships for at least the latter half of their education will be looked at better than a good degree holder with no experience. So, incoming college goers, intern, network, schmooze. Yeah, I think more and more places are going routes like this. Your college degree doesn't exactly mean a whole lot. Everyone wants experience. Or if you've managed to get an internship somewhere, then you've already gotten your foot in the door. Problem with internships is a lot of the time you're working for free for a while without a guaranteed job at the end of it. Unless you eat, sleep, and breathe architecture, do not even consider it as a major. You'll spend more money, more sleepless nights, and more of your sanity than any other student. Unless you have the passion necessary to make those sacrifices, forget it. Learn from my mistakes. I just finished a dual master's in architecture and urban design. Everything you said 100%, except now that I'm out and working, there was indeed light at the end of the tunnel. I feel bad talking crap about my own degree, but biomedical engineering. Maybe not avoid it, but make sure you have an idea of what you like at the beginning or early as possible, and tailor your work experience, classes, and training to that speciality. For example, if you like prosthetics, have things that show you're ready to compete with mechanical and electrical engineers over the same position, and that your biology and anatomy knowledge gives you an edge over them. All other engineers have obvious fields they can go into. Biomed is simply just not as flushed out, and employees may just pick grads with majors they fully understand. In my undergrad, I went more of the bioinformatics route and did a lot of coding, so I load up my resume with that stuff, and had 2 internships that furthered my coding ability. But would it have been easier if I just did computer engineering? Possibly. Avoid any major starting with pre-law, pre-med, anything like that. I know several people who became doctors with degrees in chemistry, biology, or engineering. I also know someone who finished pre-med, went to med school, realized he didn't want to be a doctor, and was screwed. He ended up spending 4 years getting a second bachelor's degree. Likewise, you can easily get a law degree and become a lawyer with degrees in all sorts of things. You can't do anything else with a pre-law degree. Criminal justice. I'm about 2 months away from having my AA in criminal justice, but every law enforcement professional I met said don't waste your time getting your bachelor's in criminal justice. Get it in something practical like business or engineering. So if, God forbid, something happens to you, then you have a degree in something else to fall back on. I want to be a police officer, by the way. That's the second time this one's come up. Maybe that is one to avoid. Don't do a business major if even the smallest amount of math freaks you out. Even in things that aren't accounting or finance, you'll still have to do a little bit in most entry-level positions. I feel like that one's kind of a given. If you're going to be in business, you're going to be handling numbers. Graphic design. The market is oversaturated with designers. Design is very subjective. No matter what jargon pro designers may throw at you about color theory and the golden ratio, when it comes down to you finding a job, it's all about if the employer likes what they see. The current industry is being devalued by sites like Fiverr and 99 Designs, where companies will pay pennies to get a logo or a flyer made. This makes companies not value or need in-house designers. Design agencies are very stuck up, and the culture is almost always cutthroat. The pay sucks. Depending on your city, the entry-level pay can fluctuate, but you'll be making nowhere near the money you could with other forms of education. You most likely will not be doing what you love unless you get lucky. If you become an in-house designer, be prepared to only design stuff related to whatever your company specializes in for the rest of your employment there. If you're hired at an agency, you'll have more opportunities to work on different brands, but may not be the brands you're interested in. If you don't like a crap ton of physics, or if you're not at least somewhat into it, don't go into lucrative engineering fields, because there's a very high chance you'll switch out. If you're in it only for the money, there's a big wake-up call heading for you. Again, engineering, you're going to be doing a lot of math, gotta be prepared for that. First of all, almost every major is useless if you can't show employers what you learned with it, i.e. internships, publications, research, papers and projects beyond what is expected of a college assignment, and things like that. Also, you may have the risk of making your degree useless if you want to stay in a certain area. In doing so, you're limiting your job prospects in that industry. For example, you major in art history, but there's only one art museum in the state and you don't want to leave the state. Secondly, most majors themselves have some degree of usefulness. Supposedly useless majors such as philosophy, history, and psych can be great prep for an advanced grad school degree like pre-law or other intensive writing and research degrees. Others, like English, classics, and journalism, show that you can write well, which is always valuable and can lead to jobs in copywriting, editing, and things like that. That being said, there are some degrees I would not recommend getting. Sports management for one. Coming from someone that worked at the highest levels of athletics, a sports management degree is useless. While there are jobs in sports, they just require you to grind and they're really competitive to get. I know for a fact that hiring managers don't give a crap about what degree you have, except for maybe like athletic training. They just care about your experience. So sports management itself doesn't get you hired, and it eliminates career options if a career in sports doesn't work out. It's also getting a rep that it's an easy major, in which I agree is the case with about 98% of sports management programs. Again, going to what I said earlier using the art history example, probably isn't a great idea to major in sports management if you attend a small private NAIA school in the middle of Iowa. Other useless majors include dance or ballet if you have a bad knee or back, and African American studies from North Carolina. Google UNC academic scandal. Sometimes you do need to use a little bit of common sense. I've seen a lot of people saying foreign language unless you double major. Nobody has yet mentioned that Japanese isn't a happy life, period. There's literally thousands of other Westerners pining for that English teaching job in Japan, and they treat you like dirt when you get there. I'm sure I could name like half a dozen people off the top of my head that would love a job like that. In the UK, if you can afford not to, don't do law. Many law firms I stumbled across prefer non-law rigorous degrees, linguistics, maths, and hard science, and a conversion to law afterwards. If you get good enough grades, you might be able to get your degrees for free because some firm or inn of court will pay for it. If you want to do IP law, just do science. Whatever area of science you graduate from is the area that you can do patents. Also, you can work in the patents office. If you don't want to do law, you'll always get asked the question as to why you studied law and you're not working in law, as I got when I was trying to get a job in PR. Finally, if you want to be a solicitor, forget the LPC. A new super exam came out in 2020, and you won't need to spend 10 to 20k on the LPC to qualify. You will, however, need 2 years work experience, so get that now. Again, another example, everyone just wants you to have experience. They feel you learn more from actually doing the job than from learning about the job. Don't go to college, period, unless you know what you want to do. We've been looking at this all wrong. Start with where you want to be in 10 to 15 years, and then work backwards. What's between you and that place? If college is one of those things, then go to college. Looking at it the wrong way is how we've ended up with $1 trillion in student loan debt. Don't just go to college for the sake of going to college. It would literally be cheaper to travel around the world, and you'd learn more. This is something I completely agree with. This is something I've said before too. Figure out where you want to be and work backwards from there. Then start towards your goal. Graphic design. Honestly, a decent major. Just make sure you take it somewhere you'll have passionate professors and not ones that just link you to a YouTube tutorial. It's easy to teach yourself graphic design rather than dish out like $40,000 to learn it. As someone who's currently enrolled, I definitely agree. Although there is some expectations for students to solve design problems on their own, I think. Professors can only give you the building blocks, not the answer. Second time graphic design came up, and that does sound like a really cool one to work in. Sounds like the way to go is maybe learn yourself online and just start making a portfolio. Anthropology. Last I heard, they crank out about 3,000 master's degrees a year, while there are about 300 job openings per year in the field. Most people, I would say, don't do anthropology to be an anthropologist. A relative got an anthropology degree at 45 and used it to go into financial counseling. There are no bad majors, only bad planning. Your degree doesn't matter in getting a job as much as the grades you get and the work experience you get during the summer. Of course, if you want to do an actual profession, and I mean a profession like medicine, law, or engineering, you do need the requisite degree and good grades and good work experience. Save again for the caveat above, no one really expects you to do anything with what you learned at bachelor's level. What the degree is supposed to do is advertise your abilities and skills. Whether we like it or not, employers will look at academic ability as a key indicator of how trainable and employable you are. Many people downplay the value of good internships and work experience. Yes, a lot of terrible places don't pay at all, but unfortunately, the market is that you need to have experience. You can ask, how could a history major work at an iBank? It's not what you learn from a book, but the skills, analytical, critical thinking, and things like that. It also shows good motivation, planning, and goals. I know many people who did useless degrees who were in some good, non-related jobs. What they did right was good grades, good work experience, and good planning. Unless you're getting into a specialized field, a degree is what a high school diploma was 30 years ago. I'm getting a degree in something I enjoy, philosophy, because everywhere I'd like to work requires something. I don't expect to make a lot, but I expect to make more than I would have without it. It might be easier for me to say this as a Canadian though. Tuition is only around $8,000 with textbooks where I live. My goal is to get my degree and find some office jobs until I land something I like. I just want a clock in, clock out kind of thing. It's easier to have these goals for myself though, since I don't want kids. Other people might have to be more concerned about their finances and earning potential. This is one way to handle it. You get a degree for relatively cheap that's gonna end you a job that pays you well, and you go from there until you find something that you really want to do for the rest of your life. Unless you have future plans for grad school or a specific career path you're dead set on, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. Picking something broad like sciences, econ, tech-based, or communications works great. I spent many years past 4 because I thought my major would dictate the rest of my life. It doesn't. You can always go back to community college for a class or two if you want something extra for a specific position you're applying for. Most jobs are entry level and just want to see a bachelor's degree and provide on-the-job training. Doing sales for any company requires knowledge of their specific CRM system, sales approaches, their product that you would never get a major in. One major I have had friends struggle with post-graduation job searching is English, unless they went into teaching or writing a book. If you major in the pure sciences, chem, physics, or biology, you'll have no career in your field without a PhD. And if you're smart enough to complete a PhD in those fields, you're smart enough to do something easier and better paying. I myself got off the research plantation and moved into technical sales when I realized how little of a future there was in chemistry, and my wife moved to statistics and data science. It really sucks to hear that people put in so much time and money into something that they think they're going to be passionate about for the rest of their lives, only to lose that passion or struggle to find a job, or get a job that doesn't pay enough, and they're just in crippling debt for years. What did your school waste money on that nobody liked? They made a huge screen with 4 plasma screens and put it in a very random place in a random building hall. All 4 just constantly said no signal and nothing else. Name tags. Shortly after Columbine and all those other shootings peaked in frequency, it was supposed to keep outsiders from getting in the school unnoticed and shooting everyone. But at the time, people doing the shootings were always students, so we joked that they were bulletproof. This does sound like one of those decisions that was made in response to something happening in current events, and maybe wasn't exactly thought through all the way. Some of my classmates won a bunch of money for our school. Our school was one of the lowest funded schools in the district. The district took the money and spent it on another school. Maybe that school needed it more or needed it for something really important, but yeah, either way, that doesn't seem fair on surface level. The large schoolyard at my school had a set of planters in the center. There were basically 4 triangles made of brick that pointed in at each other and created an X-shaped walkway between. The outside sides had a bench each attached. People would sit and chat to each other on the benches, teachers and students alike. There was very little litter or vandalism. The plants were kinda pretty insofar as any secondary schooler would care to notice. One year, a duck made her nest in one of the planters, and apart from a few "oh, hey, a duck nest" comments, it was left alone. Then, for some reason, the school decided to rip the planters out. Took them 2/3 of the school year to do it, and blocked off the X walkways so everyone had to crush by on the outside lanes between classes. Everyone was super curious as to what the planters would be replaced by. Turns out, nothing. They simply bricked over the holes left by the planters and left it as a huge empty space. We didn't even get new benches, so no one had anywhere to sit during break. People started to miss the plants since the lack of color left the whole area kinda bland. We also kept to the old X walkway since stepping over the former plants felt weirder. This seems like one of those times where it's just like, why? What was the issue? You spent a lot of time and money to just take something away that was nice? iPads for the kindergarten. They were intended to have educational apps on them that kids could play on at indoor recess. Believe it or not, most kindergartners would rather play on the swings or play with dolls than learn to write their name on an app. No one used them, no one liked them, and they all broke within 2 months. Yeah, that sounds like a waste of money if I ever heard one. I was on a boys' varsity soccer team in high school. The new head coach wanted to emphasize a more analytical approach, and as such had Booster Club buy a $10,000 goalpost camera. None of the team liked the idea anyway, especially since the girls' soccer team used their money for new jerseys and nicer balls, and they still made it farther in their playoffs than we did almost every year. As it turns out, the coach couldn't figure out how to put the camera together, and we never used it. Biggest waste of $10,000 I've ever seen. I'm sure there was a much cheaper option he probably could have gone for. Trash cans with the school logo on them and banners. They tried hyping us up about new trash cans on the morning show. At my school, they took away some of the tables in the cafeteria until we kept it cleaner. We just sat on the floor instead. When 65-inch TVs were like 4K a pop, they set about 8 of them around campus that just displayed the time, $4,000 clocks, not to mention whatever they used as a video source to send to the display. This makes no sense to me that you would make an investment like this and then not make proper use of it. What is wrong with people? You can do so much more than just show the time. Be creative, come on. My high school purchased a vending machine that only contained Swerve. What is Swerve, you ask? Carbonated milk. Again, who's in charge of these ideas? A 3D printer that the teachers won't learn how to use, so now nobody's allowed to use it. My school got 4 of those, and the teacher responsible for them actually encouraged us to take the SolidWorks course to learn about 3D design. It was actually a lot of fun, and I still have some of the objects I created. Goes to show, a lot of the times it comes down to the person doing the teaching. They have to have some enthusiasm. A memorial tree was planted for a girl who was killed right before graduation by her family and friends. The school allowed it, and there was a beautiful Japanese maple tree there for like 10 years. Apparently they just cut it down and had no reason why. Everyone was pretty ticked off, especially the family. My son's current school sent out an email to parents announcing that they'd like to add voice projection to every class. He's in 1st grade and there are 20 kids in his class. Totally unnecessary. They had a demo session and it sounded horrible. My high school teacher got these midway through my junior year, and they sucked. The range wasn't great, and the receiver in one classroom would pick up the microphone in another, and the battery life was awful, so the teachers rarely used it. The best thing that they were used for was the one time that my teacher noticed a kid in the room across the hall was asleep in class. They were watching a video and the other teacher had stepped out of the room for a moment. They walked over to the door so that the other room's receiver would pick up his mic and said, "Wake up!" and then closed his door. This really does sound like a waste of money unless you specifically have a kid who has a hearing disability or something. And in that case, normally they have something that is individual to them that connects to their hearing aid and the teacher has a microphone so that they can hear them better. Not something that needs to be projected to the whole class. When I was still a student, my school spent almost $200,000 to paint the road outside our school. You read that right. Almost $200,000 of our precious tuition dollars to paint the roads outside blue and yellow. To pour salt on this painful wound, the paint job didn't even make it through winter. Just to reiterate, $200,000 for 3 months of painted road. I think I'm still angry about it. Who would hear that cost and decide, yeah, that sounds like a good investment? My high school wasted a ton of money buying 2 golf carts. Their reasoning was it allowed staff to get to any dangerous scenes faster. Except we never had any accidents and they were mostly used for joyrides by the hall monitors. You know what? This one I can kinda get behind. It's not some $200,000 expense and they got used and you had a little fun along the way. One of the schools in our district paid an astronomical fee to an artist to create artwork for the hall of the school. Paid for the dude's room and board for like a year, and he produced a large polished piece of wood. No, literally, that's it. It was supposed to be shaped like a heart, but looks more like a butt, and is now known as the Bart. I'm sorry, but sometimes I do think that modern art is just ridiculous and a ripoff. My school just spent tens of millions of dollars on a remodel that includes a new commons and front office area, which were not needed, but no new classrooms, which were desperately needed. The old commons was warm, inviting, bright, and beautiful. It wasn't old. The new commons is dark, cold, sterile, and uninviting. The exterior was changed too. The entire front of the school used to be attractive. Now it looks like a prison. I think maybe the architect presented the design as a joke, but our principal liked it, so the architect just rolled with it. It never fails that when a school gets some money, they spend it on the staff and not the students. They cut out welding, machine shop, wood shop, and graphic design to buy a $1 million scoreboard for football. Honestly, there's way too much value put onto sports. Everything that was listed sounds way more valuable to learn than to be able to look at a scoreboard. Our mascot was a rocket, and a certain percentage of school construction money had to be spent on art. They spent $90,000 commissioning a giant rocket sculpture for the main field entrance. When it was unveiled, the artist had made one tiny change to the design. Instead of a pointy rocket tip, he'd gone with a rounded, mushroom tip. I mean, we thought it was hilarious, especially when they cut off the tip as their solution to the problem. But nobody liked it. I'm sorry. Did they circumcise the rocket? My school invested in 8-year-old Chromebooks that die in like 30 minutes. Again, not willing to invest in what the students actually need, and just going for the cheapest, crappiest thing they can find. I'm a teacher. My first year, the school leader bought a ping pong table for the lounge in an attempt to make the school more fun and relaxing. It simply became a surface to put copies on. You know what? This one sounds like it's more of a people around you situation. You guys could be having fun with it, but you're choosing not to. That's on you, not them. Besides, tables themselves can get pretty expensive. At least this one you can play with if you want. My son's elementary school PTO had an excess of funds. They decided to put it on a buddy bench. A buddy bench is a bench where you can sit on if you want a buddy. In theory, it sounded like a decent idea, except that it was placed in the hallway near the office and none of the kids wanted to be identified as someone who didn't have a friend. Nobody ever sits on it. I agreed that the theory of the buddy bench is nice, but in practicality, it's probably not going to get used. This wasn't common knowledge, so I was the only one really ticked off by it, but I worked for Cisco Foods as a baker at a university, and the upper echelons of the administration had hired their own personal pastry chef to make these extravagant desserts for their meetings. This pastry chef was legit. She made absolutely amazing desserts of a wide variety every day, loaded them onto the cart, and with her baker's outfit and hat on would wheel it up to their daily administration meetings. Her salary was paid for by the students of the school, so that the administrators could dine on first-class pastries and desserts made from scratch each day. She was really good at her job and actually helped me improve in the bakery. But I was so mad that her job even existed simply to provide pastries to people who just sat around and decided how the school's money was spent. I obviously didn't make a stink about it to anyone because she was my friend, and I would never dream of putting her employment at risk. But I couldn't help feeling like her entire career was to make fat cats fatter, and it just boiled my blood. Okay, this is the first story that has genuinely ticked me off in how money is being spent. Just random TVs in the hallway that showed slideshows and crap. Tens of thousands of dollars when we could have just put up bulletin boards. My school had loads of TVs that I don't recall ever seeing turned on. Seems like there might be a trend in the TV area here. They installed cameras in nearly every inch of the school, not for student safety, but because the school board didn't trust the kids. My school was miles behind other high schools. Old textbooks and sometimes not enough textbooks. Computers were junk, no in-school programs. They spent every ounce of money on cameras and putting the rest in the school board's pockets. I really feel like these places need to be more strongly audited for stuff like this. My high school spent a bunch of money on this system to play popular songs for the last minute of passing time between classes. So we'd hear popular music and as a convenient way to know to get to your next class. Then they started playing Friday by Rebecca Black every Friday. Once. Then it was the only song on Fridays. Then it was the only song. Every day, 5 times a day. Thank God that was my senior year. No idea if they still do it. My God, I hope not. I'm sure the kids would be rioting. My school's mascot was a knight, and it was rumored that the school had the choice of installing a pool at the high school or to commission a large 25-foot-long metal sculpture of a knight on a horse, and to hang it from the ceiling in the back hallway. They opted for the horse. My guess on this one is they didn't want the long-term maintenance cost of the pool. They bought flags of all the states and put them around this caged-in area full of gravel. They caged in the gravel to stop students from walking across the gravel. They also bought flags in the school's color to line the fence around campus. Only thing is, we were in an area which can get very windy with zero windshield, so those flags took a beating. By mid-year, they were an ugly, ugly frayed mess. My school spent $30,000 from 2 years of fundraising on an LED billboard about 10 feet off of a major road. It was so bright that it caused several accidents at night and had to be shut down about 8 months later because it was deemed a safety hazard. I hung out with several of the guys on the programming team and they figured out how to upload memes onto it. They couldn't figure out who did it, so no one got in trouble. In 2011, my college spent $32,000 to have Snooki come in as an inspirational speaker in some misguided attempt to connect with freshmen. Around the same time, there was a growing student-led movement to make the school more affordable. The student board revolted. People confronted her during her speech. It was a glorious mess. I think anyone who finds Snooki to be inspirational doesn't need to be encouraged. I went to a Catholic high school. Very few of the students were actually Catholic and went there because the local public school district was terrible. We won some contest or grant and the school said they would allow the students to pick what the money was spent on. The options were new flooring for the gym, renovate the courtyard next to the chapel into a prayer garden, or renovating the courtyard next to the cafeteria into an outdoor eating space. Most people voted for new gym floors, and some people voted for the outdoor eating space. I don't know of anyone who voted for the prayer garden. Guess what won? The prayer garden. People, even teachers, were furious, as the voting was clearly rigged to give us the appearance of a choice. If they really wanted a prayer garden, they should have just done the work without putting it to a vote. The funny thing about the prayer garden is that they actually made it nice and put in benches and plants and whatnot, but it was always locked and never used. Administration would often say during tours, "Oh, look at our lovely prayer garden for students. They voted for it." No, we didn't. Wait, the church used the money on themselves? No. i7 workstation laptops with Quadro GPUs, easily $2,500 each, for an elementary school, kindergarten through grade 6. Those machines were designed for CAD work and media production, but were instead solely used for web browsing and Microsoft Word. I don't have any idea why they bought them. Okay, so earlier we were talking about 8-year-old Chromebooks. This school has decided to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. These are laptops that should be available to university students who are studying like 3D rendering and things like that. This really goes to show that the people who decide where the money goes don't have any idea what they're doing. Laminated ID cards that everyone had to wear around their necks on some dorky lanyard. No one did it, so they made it punishable by detention. After that, half the students still didn't do it, and the detention hall became so overwhelmed that they began to make backlogs. After a few weeks, not wearing it gave you a detention 2 months from then. Eventually, detention became so backlogged that students started doing more severe transgressions because they would have graduated before they could actually be forced to go to detention. After about a month of this, no one had to wear their ID cards at all anymore. They said it was for security purposes so no one could sneak into the school. The thing is, you could literally put anything in the lanyard and no one would check if it was your actual student ID card. I had a blank index card in mine and no one ever said anything to me. If someone actually wanted to sneak into the school, all they would need is a lanyard and no one would ever check if it's actually authentic or not. Like, what's the point? You're gonna sit there and enforce detention that aggressively because you need to flex your power over the students, but you're not gonna enforce the actual safety aspect that you're trying to argue that it's there for in the first place? Guys, this thread's really getting to me. Our school paid to cover a huge lot with cement just to have a ceremony on it announcing a new building. Then they tore it up 2 months later to start construction. My school fees went towards having nice cement for press pictures. What a joke. My school wasted so much money on plastic ID cards that you were supposed to scan into every room to assure you were there, and the IDs were also keys to get into the buildings. If you didn't have your card, you couldn't get in, and also got in-school suspension. It wasn't a bad system because you could easily take a photo of your ID to scan into rooms, but you'd have to bum a buddy to get into a building. But once there were internet problems, the whole system would shut down, and living in a rural wheat town, you could expect wind and rain and tornadoes and all of that fun stuff. My college spent $2,000 on a conference table. It made national headlines. This just reminds me of that scene from Community. When I went to college, the local NFL team paid for the school to go from a grass field to artificial turf. The school never said it was only half paid for by the team. My siblings had a whole year without paper, printers, no raises for staffs, cutting school programs, and they slashed the art budget. The football team still got new uniforms that year though. How are you going to put so much value on your football team? Come on, give the rest of the students what they need. My town got a brand new middle school, and somehow they spent $40,000 on a giant metal palm tree that they called the Learning Tree. One of the chair people essentially commissioned it from a relative. So many of us were ticked off. It didn't even have lights, and there was no way to clean it, so it just sat there like the giant waste of money it was collecting dust. Well, we liked it at first, not so much after. I followed a product development study and we got a fancy industry-grade laser cutter in our workplace. Then after a couple of people were able to use it, the teacher decided it needed cleaning. She proceeded to use a toothpick to shove it into the nozzle where the laser comes out, damaging the mirror inside the machine. We had this thing for less than a week. 2 years later I graduated, and as far as I know, that thing is still broken. Those lasers are incredibly expensive and powerful. What do you think was stuck in there that you could get out with a toothpick that the laser couldn't get out itself? When I started secondary school, we had a canteen with proper home-style food being served. Cooked fresh, real meat and vegetables, and good portion sizes. All the students loved it, and it was well used. The school decided to replace this with a fast food style setup with processed burgers and fries to try to appeal to the kids, and up the prices too. Within a month, nobody visited the canteen anymore. Practically every kid in the school started bringing food from home. It took 3 months till they changed everything back again. Massive expense for absolutely no reason. It was already very successful as it was. Why mess with a good thing? You just wanted to get cheaper food in there and charge more, didn't you?
Children, what is something you found out about your parents that you never told them about? When I was around 10, my father came storming into my room and stiff-armed me into the wall. He screamed in my face through tear-filled, angry eyes. "What did you do to it?" I had no idea what he was talking about. He dragged me into the bathroom and pointed at a box of Arm & Hammer used to deodorize the bathroom. Still screaming, his hand squeezing the back of my neck so hard I thought he was going to snap my neck. I still pled ignorance. No clue what he was talking about. He threw me in my room and barricaded the door with a large dresser so I couldn't get out. Even though it was a pull. He left me in there for 3 days. No food, nothing. I was terrified. He never explained why he did what he did or what he was talking about. Found out later when my much older cousin confessed at a family Christmas party that she had broken into our home and stole my dad and stepmom's booger sugar stash that they hid in the Arm & Hammer. She said this like it was a funny family story. So my dad locked me up during a bender and almost killed me in the process. I'm now a dad and don't speak to my parents at all. Screw them. Found out the reason we were so poor growing up was because both my parents had a drinking and booger sugar issue. We always had a house, food, health insurance, and clothes. But a few years without Christmas and birthdays happened. We almost lost the house once. My parents were pretty high functioning for addicts to keep us. Oh well. I didn't know my dad had a wife before my mother until I was 18. I know that my mother is a convicted felon. Not my parents, but still my family. I also know my grandfather had an illegitimate child with my aunt. I put 2 and 2 together. My aunt is my mother's sister. My uncle is her son, but my mother's brother. And my cousin is my aunt's child. My uncle's siblings and my mother's niece. It was later confirmed by the other side of the family. My mother doesn't know that I know. But how did you find out your mother was a convicted criminal? Was it like a Wikipedia search? Did you Google then, eh? I always thought my father had a very small appetite. He'd eat a few bites of a meal and declare he was full. When I hosted my first big Thanksgiving in my house with my fiancé, my father put away 3 pounds of potatoes, a whole pie, and more than half the turkey by himself. My mother remarked how he'd had a bottomless stomach since they were kids. I was telling my fiancé later that night how oddly the remark struck me considering his track record. My fiancé explained to me my father wasn't eating so there'd be enough to go around for me, my sister, and mother. I know their bank and budget details. My parents were raised never to talk about money. It was considered improper, which is not great when when it comes to learning budgets, etc. Google saved my wallet. When I was real young, we didn't have much of it, and I'm sure that influences that attitude too. My father was forced to retire. Job qualifications were changed on him. More school versus early retirement after working for this one job his entire life. Mom had a government-funded job that got cut this year. I was worried about their finances. I wasn't planning on helping them out for at least another decade, and I've been anxious about them. Accidentally overheard them debating some stuff while visiting for Christmas. His 401k is okay, and it turns out he did get his pension. It's just reduced. Going to keep an eye on their needs, but I think they're going to be okay, minus any emergencies. My mother was bad touched as a kid by my grandfather. For the most part, she's normal, but she has some emotional issues and bouts of depression. My grandfather died before I was born. My grandmother and mother never talk about him, and I've never seen a picture of him. Honestly, I don't even know his name. My aunts told me one day when I asked why nobody talks about him when I was older. I think that's a pretty damn good reason to never bring someone up in conversation or even tell future generations in the family that person's name. They'd be dead to me too. In like an emotional way on top of the already literal way, I mean. My dad would always tell my little brother and I about this Russian girlfriend he had when he was younger. What he very conveniently left out, however, is that they got married so that she could have citizenship. Thank you, Ancestry.com. He still has no idea that I know anything about it. The circumstances of my parents' divorce. I was 10 when they separated, and they never really told us why. Just that their marriage wasn't working anymore. I didn't really care, so I didn't ask, but over the next few years I would eavesdrop on bits and pieces of conversations they had and eventually put the pieces together. Basically, my mom cheated on my dad with my now stepdad. My mom and now stepdad worked at the same high school, and my mom had taught each of his kids. When my dad became suspicious, he put a keylogger in the family computer in her phone and found some suspicious texts, emails, searches, etc. He hired a PI who followed my mom to the airport one day and struck up a conversation with her. My mom took the bait and ended up confessing everything to the PI under the impression it was some random stranger. I was introduced to my now stepdad a little under a year after they separated, but didn't meet any of his children or family until a few years later. Turns out he was having an affair as well, but was introduced to me by my brothers while he was still with his wife. I don't think any of my parents know that I know this, and it's not something I would ever bring up with them. I love all my parents and step-parents the same, and although they all did some crappy things, they all seem much happier now than they were when they were married to one another. When I was around 10 to 11, I went through a really rough patch emotionally. The substances I was getting for my ADHD started messing with me really bad, and that combined with regular prepubescent angst turned me into quite the little butthole. I started getting into a lot of fights in school and was generally an emotional wreck. I'd get so mad I couldn't express it and would instead just be a douche to everyone around me. One night I was on the couch with my eyes closed, basically being quiet for the first time in months. And I heard my mom say to my brother that raising me was just really hard and that sometimes she wished I was just someone else's problem. I know she was just tired and frustrated, but I've never forgotten that, and I've also never confronted her about it. My mom was cheating on my dad. That's a huge reason why they split. She very quickly remarried and popped out my brother. It wasn't until I was an adult that I did the math and realized she was pregnant by her second husband and still married to my father. My parents started going through a messy divorce when I was in middle school. It was a big mix of things which ended it. According to my dad, my mom was a secret alcoholic and would often pick my brother and I up from school while drunk. When my dad found out, we would randomly get picked up by a friend's parents and they would watch us while my dad made my mom sober up. My dad likes to exaggerate, so I have no idea how much she drank, or if she was just having a couple drinks with lunch. Either way, my mom doesn't know that I know she picked us up from school drunk. She's definitely not an alcoholic now. She keeps the booze front and center in the house now, and it always goes down at a reasonable rate. For my dad, when the divorce was final, he completely shut down. He became a recluse and wouldn't talk to anyone outside of work. He felt like he lost all of his friends in the divorce, but I could tell something else was bothering him. He never really recovered from the divorce and still only interacts with me, my brother, and his siblings. The divorce was finalized about 8 years ago. I was talking with my uncle, my dad's youngest brother, who roomed with him in college. Saying how worried I was about Dad being lonely as he approaches 60, my uncle told me to never tell him I know. But apparently my dad was engaged to another woman when he was in college. They had been engaged for 6 months when my dad contracted gonorrhea from his fiancée. Turns out she had been cheating on him for years with the rest of the football team. I guess he never recovered from that, because it explains a lot of his controlling behavior and his distrust of anyone but a blood relative. I always want to tell him I know and that it's okay for him to talk to me about what happened, but I also don't want to betray my uncle's trust and ruin one of my dad's last good relationships. He recently found out his sister and mother were keeping a small secret from him and threatened to never speak to them again. He has a lot of trust issues and abhors being lied to. I found out my dad had been cheating on my mother for most of their marriage with a large number of different women over the years by following Wireshark tutorials on hack forums as a teenager. We're a middle-class suburban family and I have 3 siblings. My dad does all the work and my mom is a stay-at-home mom without a lot of payable skills. Telling my mom would ruin her and the family. They would either divorce or my mom would stay quiet to keep the quality of life for her children. Either one has no positives for me, my mother, or my siblings. My youngest brother is graduating high school soon and the rest of us have moved out. I have a very large amount of evidence compiled, and I'm planning on anonymously giving it to her in a few months. I can't lie, I don't envy this man, the situation he's in, or the decisions that he is making. I would not want anything to do with this. I mean, good luck with that. My aunt and uncle stopped talking to my parents when I was about 10 years old up until I was 18 and I reconnected with my cousin, their son. It hurt my parents that my mom's brother and his wife stopped talking to them for, as far as my parents were concerned, no reason. When me and my cousin became friends, our parents started talking again. Once I was talking to my cousin about it and he told me that his parents stopped talking to mine because my parents didn't buy big enough presents for my cousins, even though they were well off and my parents at the time were pretty broke. I've hated them ever since, though. I would never tell my parents this, as it would hurt their feelings, but F you, Steve, and F you, Lorraine, for being a pair of materialistic little douches. Also, Lorraine, my cousin told me that he walked in on you doing it with another guy, so you're also a cheating harlot. Have a nice life, buttholes. I went through the DirecTV history on my parents' TV. I wanted to find the name of a show my father kept telling me he loved so I could buy him DVD copies. Instead, I found a bunch of GGW PPVs. My father, the man who taught me how to illegally download media, buys his smut through pay-per-view on his cable provider. I was so embarrassed I could never bring myself to tell him. I'm terrified he might have to commit the Irish Catholic version of seppuku. My dad thinks my mom is insane. He regrets his entire relationship they had since they were teenagers. That's not it, though. My dad is even more messed up than my mom. He has serious emotional issues. Being in prison tamed him in the sense that he doesn't feel in the position to act on his impulses, but he has them still. I see it. My mom and dad had an abuser-victim codependent relationship made in hell. She says she stayed for the kids, but the whole reason why she had us in the first place is because she was trying to chain a man to look after her. She is incapable of taking care of herself to this day. My dad thinks I'm exactly like her. He also won't say that. He really doesn't like me, and I used to be scared he would do something to me, but he won't do anything now because 1, he's old and needs someone to take care of him. He knows his wife would leave him in a heartbeat. Contrary to my mom, she doesn't actually need him. 2, I am diagnosed mentally ill, and as far as he's concerned, I am totally crippled, which pretty much guarantees that I'll either stay by his side until he dies or will run to the first douche that can financially support me. They don't know that I know why they did all of that. It's pretty sad. They are both so afraid of being old and alone. We were apparently much better off than I knew when I was a kid. I never thought we were poor because we didn't go without the basics, but I was constantly told we couldn't afford things my mom just didn't want to spend the money on, so I was in the hand-me-downs from church members until high school. Wasn't allowed extracurriculars that had added costs, so no sports or Girl Scouts, that sort of thing. When I started working in high school at 14, my parents stopped paying for pretty much everything except my health and car insurance. I bought my own food, clothes, phone, etc. Never mind that my younger brother got to do anything he wanted and mom still pays for his car payments. Definitely not the end of the world, but it gave me a weird complex and I still have troubles budgeting and rationalizing extra purchases. Maybe some parents in the world are just fine with being really open about who their favorite kid is in extreme ways. Or maybe your mum woke up on the wrong side of the bed the day you were born and they've just been internalizing that anger for your entire existence. I ain't got a clue, but you certainly have my sympathies. When I was 15, I was broke and looking around the house for spare change. I was home alone at the time. I looked in my parents' room and found a metal box with a padlock on it. My curiosity got the best of me and I looked around for the key. I found it and unlocked the box. There were letters and a journal inside, written by my mom. They were what she wrote in for therapy. It turns out my mother had 3 miscarriages before having me. I have an older brother and we're 7 years apart. I don't think he knows yet. I don't want to tell him, really. The letters made me cry my eyes out. I'm a mama's boy. All 3 of the miscarriages were going to be girls. She wanted a daughter named Mary Catherine. After she had me, she had to have surgery and was infertile afterwards. I always felt sorry for my mother since then. If I get married and have a daughter, I think I'm going to name her Mary Catherine. I don't like being accusatory, but what were you going to do if that lockbox had money in it? I wanted to record a video for YouTube. I was covering songs and wanted to do a bit of a higher quality video this time. I knew my dad had a cool old camcorder somewhere, so I decided to poke around to find it. I find it under my parents' bed and think sarcastically, what if they had an SX tape on here, LOL. My parents are not the type, I thought, to do something like that. And it seems so, movie cliche. So my dumb butt rewinds the video and I'm confronted with my mother's woo-ha taking up the whole screen. Mentally scarred, I close the camcorder and shuffle back downstairs, trying my best to forget that horrendous mistake. They've got no idea I saw that.
My dad was drunk once and told me my mom was boring in bed. This was a couple years after they divorced due to him finding another woman. Still, gee, thanks, Dad. I didn't need to know.
My dad left his emails open one day, and with me being a snoopy 9-year-old, I had a look. Turns out when he visited his home country, he had an affair with his ex-girlfriend and was now having asexual conversations with her. I never told my mother, but 3 days later I was notified that they were getting a divorce. I know my mother is scamming money from a pension she should no longer be getting. She also took hundreds of pounds worth me and my brother were entitled to until we were 18. Both moved out at 17. And to top it off, she then took mine, not my brother's, only mine, bank fund my father put away for me before he died. They have a lovely car and home and excess money, and when I asked them for help, they never did. My brother asked and he got to move back home and got invited round for dinners. I know I was treated differently because I had a daughter and my stepdad hates kids. I found out my dad was a paranoid schizophrenic one night when I overheard my grandma praying for him. She thought I was asleep. I was like 16, but genuinely thought that his behavior was the most normal thing in the world since I had grown up with it. I cried myself to sleep that night. I did some research on it not long after since I didn't know too much about schizophrenia and was so traumatized when I realized how messed up he was. I don't know if it was by chance or because I started noticing things, but he became unbearably worse after, and me and him started fighting really badly. My mom finally told him to leave the house and they had a really messy divorce. I still feel guilty about fighting with him to this day and wonder if things would be better if I had never found out. He lives alone now and isn't allowed contact with any of us. It wasn't originally like that. My siblings used to go and visit him and he started electrocuting them so nobody could hear their thoughts. I feel so guilty when I think of him, living alone without any family around him. I've never told anyone that I found out through my grandma, but my mum still has never spoken to me about it. Now that I look back on things, I'm 24 now, I realize that she was being emotionally abused by him. It was just so normal to us, we never even realized. I know my mom used to do booger sugar and may have been to rehab. It's super weird because she and my dad became hardcore evangelicals before I was born and my mom has never alluded to her previous lifestyle. It's kind of annoying because throughout my teen years, she acted like my curiosity about everything was just wrong and she didn't understand why I would think to involve myself in it. She always acted better than me, and I know she would be really mad if she knew that I knew. Some people are just really weird and can't accept or let other people know that they at some point have made mistakes in their life. A laptop that was handed down from my dad to me and then to my sister had some disturbing court documents buried real deep about my real mom on it. It was regarding the custody battle and there were numerous accounts of our mom trying to cause physical harm on us. We were too young to remember any of it, but one of them was about how my mom drove our Bronco into a lake with my sister in it. She wasn't even 2 at the time. I always wondered where that car went. Both my sister and I have just never said anything because we know how hard it was and how long it took for our dad to get custody, and the amount of crap he went through we'll probably never understand. My dad wasn't a virgin when he married my mom, even though she thinks he was. I also know he's cheated on her twice, at least. All of my siblings know as well, but none of us have told her. She's completely against divorce because of her religion, so it wouldn't make her leave. She'd just be miserable. Well, more miserable than she already is with him. Got a whole lot of infidelity going on here in this topic, and on the ones that I haven't read, a lot of hardcore you don't want to know fetishes. I'm the eldest, but only because of something that had happened to the one before me. My old aunt called me his name before correcting herself and telling me a bit. When she realized I actually didn't know, she shut up and wouldn't say another word. All I know is that my entire family knows, but they refuse to tell me anything. And they tell me to drop it because it was some traumatic event that my parents don't ever want to talk about. My dad apparently gave my uncle on my mum's side a black eye just for mentioning it, and Dad's pretty calm and cool-headed. I'm 19, my brother is 17, he doesn't know, and this will be a mystery until the day they die and I can dig out the information from someone else. I found love letters from my dad to my mum. I read 1 or 2 sentences. The one that sticks with me is he said he wanted to pour champagne all over her body. Then thought, holy crap, this is personal and gross, and put them back. The sad thing is they frickin' hate each other now. My father passed before I was born. Just yesterday, a buddy was telling me he was able to go back 6 generations using the Find a Grave website to find out his ancestors' names. I thought cool, as I've never met my father's father and didn't know he was still alive. I share his name. I find my father's page, but unfortunately there's no link for parents like my friend's relatives had. Bummer. I do notice, though, that there are several posts to his memorial page, so I go there. Apparently, my mom goes there at least monthly, sometimes more often, and posts how much she misses him and how she wishes he were still alive, etc. She has been with my stepfather, who for all purposes is my father, for many, many years. She lives in a different state and can rarely get to his actual grave. I never felt so sad for my mom as I did yesterday afternoon, but I'll never bring it up. I did call her, though, to chit-chat and gossip a bit, though. Check on your relatives regularly. Unless you've got beef with them, of course, in which case you do you. Not my parents, but my friend's parents. A long time ago, he had a few of us over for late-night games and pizza. My buddy Mike asked me to come into his parents' bedroom, which I thought was weird, but I'm 12, so who cares? He pulls open the bottom drawer of a large dresser, and he takes out what I thought was an elephant mask. Turns out it's an electronic elephant head with a thong attached, and there's a little crevice in the elephant's trunk where you can put your you-know-what, and when the mask is turned on, the trunk moves up and down as it makes elephant noises. Not that it really bothers me, but I never looked at his dad the same again. A huge part of why I left home was because of a call I heard from my mom. When I was in high school, my mom would pick me up after school from one of 2 places that sounded similar and started with the same letter. One day I went to the wrong place to be picked up, my grandmother's apartment, instead of a shopping center. My grandma, who always loved causing fights in our family, took a call from my mom on speakerphone with me in the next room, where my mom called me a devil child, a worthless B-word, and said she never should have tried to get me back from child services after I was taken away because of her abuse. I knew she thought that about me, but it really helped me realize that all her talk about keeping fights in the nuclear family was so she could misrepresent my abuse to the extended family. I also realized that my mom must have done this fairly regularly if my grandma knew to have her on speakerphone instead of taking the call on a phone as normal. It pretty much solidified that my mom had no positive feelings for me and was only keeping me around to further abuse and manipulate. My dad lied to my family for 25 years about having fought in Vietnam. My whole life, he and my mother insisted that he had endured horrific traumas as a young man. However, after they got divorced, my mother mentioned this to his sister. His sister insisted that he had never been in combat and that he had spent his military career in Hawaii. She went so far as to have my father's ex-wife, who knew him at the time, call my mom and confirm that during that time, he was in Hawaii. Other bits and pieces began to make sense, and it became clear that he had lied to my mother about his experience in order to manipulate her. I've never told him that I know this because I'm worried he will lash out or maybe self-delete himself or something. At the end of the day, though, it is kind of a relief to know that he was never in any harm. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.